Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Bat Around. The Bat Around brought to you today by PressBoxOnline.com. Bet $5 with DraftKings and instantly get $200 in bonus bets to use for anything at all. Get this and other great sportsbook promos and specials at PressBoxOnline.com/offers. That's PressBoxOnline.com/offers, or as the ad reads, PressBoxOnline.com.
Prespo.
Wasn't the name of Cam's clown, the clown that Cam played in
Modern Family?
Wasn't it Fizbo?
It was.
That helped me remember something for the mortgage industry, because there's an acronym, FSBO, and I was like, oh, Fizbo, like Cam's clown.
There you go.
Cam's clown. Good morning, everybody. I'm Paul Valley. He's Zach Goodman. We are your host, co-host, producers, jack of all trades of the Bat Around, coming to you on a chilly, dreary-looking Saturday. I think there's snow in the forecast.
There might be. By the way, that is the biggest thing I've ever seen.
That's
never
what she
seen
said.
Yes! How do you like that?
I've never seen a water bottle that big. You have the world's biggest Yeti. There's never been a Yeti that big.
Dude, they mass-produce these things.
I know.
Yeah,
I'm aware.
Yes, there has.
I'm aware.
So a few years back, I asked my sister for a gallon Yeti for Christmas. That's all I wanted. She got me a...
That's only a gallon?
Yeah.
Wow.
She got me a gallon Arctic, which worked for me until I realized it was really only 3/4 of a gallon. And but they sell it as a gallon, but that's also why it's significantly cheaper.
Yeah.
So I had that for a year. I lugged it around everywhere, and then the next year for Christmas, my lovely wife, her mother, got me the gallon Yeti, and it has been by my side every day since.
Wow.
Yeah, I try to drink a gallon of water every day. I come up short quite a bit.
Yeah, it's way harder than you think it would be.
It's really hard, and if
a
you're
lot of
not
water.
used to it, you're peeing every 20 minutes.
Yeah.
But I try to drink a gallon of water every day, and to ensure that I do so, I carry that sweet lady with me everywhere I go.
Nice.
Not, I mean, when I say everywhere I go, it's not like I go to like the mall or something. People still go to malls.
You could put that thing around your neck. It could be like a, one of those milk jug kind of things.
Flava Flav.
Yeah.
Just wear
Sure.
instead of the clock, wear the giant Yeti. Man, that thing would put so much strain.
I
on
could
my
see you
neck.
just packing the protein powder in there. I'm surprised you don't have it.
There's no way I would do that.
Really?
That's
so. He was a protein powder guy.
Yeah, I use protein powder, but I use it in the blender bottles. I'm not going to put it in a Yeti.
Fair enough.
And just sip that. I could sip that all day.
You could sip that all day.
I could sip that all day. Maybe
I'm giving you out ideas. I mean,
maybe I'll do that with the Arctic jug.
Sure. You do what you want to do, man.
Arctic. Extra emphasis on the C's. So Zach and I are playing golf tomorrow morning, and it is going to be Frigidaire. It's gonna be freaking cold out there.
Is it? I didn't even look.
What are we looking at? It's like a high of like 52 tomorrow, but at 7:45 in the morning is our tee time.
Yeah.
It's gonna be like 31 degrees when we tee off. So dress warmly. I did play on Thursday when it was like 75 degrees. My partner at the mortgage company that I work for, he is a member at Maryland Golf and Country Club, so he took me out there, and they are under construction. They are renovating the whole place. It's going to look fantastic. And so they only had 9 holes open. But the 9 holes that they had open wasn't like the front 9 or the back 9. It was, we started on 10. We went 10, 11, 12, 17, 1, 2, 4, 7, 8.
Nice.
That's how our round went. Well, let me tell you something. One of the biggest friggin' anomalies of my life happened.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I parred the first hole. That's not the anomaly. I get some pars.
A few.
I had a great tee shot on the second hole.
Okay.
Great tee shot, and I was like 60 yards from the green in the middle of the fairway, and I thinned my chip shot, and it sailed it over the green, and then I'm chipping on a downward slope, and it rolled off the front of the green, and I putt 3 times from there. It was not good.
Okay.
So anyway, that wasn't the anomaly. It was on the 17th hole, which was our 4th hole. I hit my drive into the sand trap down the right side of the opposite fairway. Down the right side for me, the left side of the fairway.
For the hole coming across. Right.
Right side for both. Right side for both. Okay.
Oh, okay.
So it's just over the cart path going up the right side of my hole. And the ball's in the trap, so I take an 8-iron. I got a little bit of a lip in front of me. I smash this 8-iron out of the trap like 170 yards.
Okay.
Right? It lands up by the tee box. And it's up by the tee box on the next hole because I just went up the fairway so I could get by the trees and chip onto the green, be on in 3. Can't find my ball. There's no reason for it to be gone. You ever have one of those shots where the ball just disappears and it's
We've had that when I was playing with you one time. I've had that.
It's literally in the middle of a wide open space where everybody should be able to find it, and we just can't find it. There's guys on the tee box. There's people behind us because it's beautiful out, so everybody wants to play golf.
Sure.
So Dave says to me, just drop a ball. Don't take a penalty stroke. We don't have time to look for it. So I do. I'm about 70 yards away from the green. I've got a tree about 10 yards in front of me. I take my 56 degree, and I'm like, I can get over this tree. I hit a beautiful shot.
Okay.
I hit a beautiful shot over this tree, and it lands about 8 feet from the cup.
Okay.
I should be putting for bird from about 8 feet, a makeable birdie. The problem is it landed directly on top of another player's ball that I was playing with. Literally hit his ball.
Yeah.
His ball rolls to within 4 feet of the cup. My ball shoots 20 yards in the opposite direction off the green. So I'm punished for this gorgeous shot. And then these greens are fast. I'm chipping on a bit of a slope again. I chip it off the green. I chip it back onto the green. I 2-putt, and I end up taking a freaking 7 on a hole where I should have had an 8-foot putt for birdie. That pissed me off. The ball should have been 8 feet from the cup for bird. And instead, it hits this guy's freaking ball and ricochets. And at first, I thought it was his ball that ricocheted, not mine. I thought I got close to the pin. I'm like, dude, you can put that ball back. He goes, no, this is mine. That's yours. I was like, are you effing kidding me? I almost cursed just now. I'm still pissed off thinking about it.
Wow.
Anyway, I know this is a baseball show, but I just felt like I wanted to share that with people because baseball players oftentimes play golf.
Yes, I haven't beaten you yet, so maybe tomorrow will be the day. I don't know. I shot my lowest on 9 I've ever shot the other day. I haven't been practicing, and I practice a lot, like especially over the summer. I'm out there like 3-4 times a week. Mm-hmm. But I shot a 41 the other day, which is my lowest on a 9 ever. My previous low was a 42. So I'm hoping. We'll see. We'll see how it goes.
I hadn't played since October. I hadn't swung a golf club since October. Mm-hmm. I shot a 48.
Okay.
And the problem is, it should have been, in my mind, it's like a 43 or a 44 because of what happened on that hole. And then there was another hole where I'm laying 2 in the middle of the fairway.
Okay.
And it's a par 4. I got ahead of myself because I hit a good tee shot, and I'm trying to hit an approach shot onto the green and have another putt for birdie, and I looked to see where the ball was going before I hit it, and I topped it. So my next shot, I made sure I kept my head down. I took a nice fluid swing, and I hit a beautiful shot onto the back of the green. The problem is they were renovating this green, and the back of the green was all torn up and covered by a tarp, so it landed on a tarp. And I had to, by the rule, I had to take the ball and pull it behind the tarp and chip up over the tarp, also on a downward slope.
Right.
So I hit a nice chip shot, but it just trickled down to the fringe. So I'm laying 4 down there now, and then I had to come up and 3-putt from the fringe. A good bit. It was like a 40-foot putt, and so I got a 7. But in my mind, it should have been a bogey. It should have been a 5.
Sure.
And I feel like instead of a 48, I probably should have had about a 43 or 44.
Sure.
That's my theory. Anyway, we have spent 9 minutes talking about golf on a baseball show. My sincerest apologies if you were coming in because you're excited about spring training and the first game being today. We're excited too. We're going to talk about it right now. O's taking on the Minnesota Twins at Ed Smith Stadium down in Sarasota. It's the first spring training game, the first game in the Grapefruit League action for the Baltimore Orioles. Drew Rom, who the Orioles just protected in the Rule 5 draft, they add him to the 40-man roster because he may have been taken. I'm not sure if he would have or not, but
being a lefty, possibly.
Somebody may have taken a flyer on him, stashed him in their bullpen, or put him on their IL after the requisite time or whatever. I don't know. But he gets the ball today. Any chance, and look, there's always a chance. You could have 7 injuries, and he gets a chance. But is there any chance that we see Drew Rom debut in the major leagues this year? Do you think that maybe he could pitch his way into the equation at some point this year? I think there's 100% likelihood that he starts the year in Norfolk's rotation.
Yes.
But do you think that he could pitch well enough to make it to the major leagues this year and be a factor?
That's a good question. I mean, last year it was his age 22 season, and he put up a 4.54 ERA in Norfolk, only pitched 7 games. I think there's a little more work he's going to have to do there to prove himself. I want to see probably at least, 17 starts in Norfolk before I'm thinking about bringing him up. You've got to get him at over 100 innings for sure, I would think. So if it is a promotion for Drew Rom this year, as a 23-year-old, I would think it would be pretty late in the season. I would probably think we're looking at late August, September, that kind of thing. Maybe if they're making a playoff run and you need another lefty, Drew Rom would kind of be a perfect guy to go to. 23, get him experience on a ball club that he could be a big part of in 24. It's a really good possibility, but they didn't do it with Grayson Rodriguez this year. He wasn't brought up, so maybe they'll play it safe with Drew Rom too.
This year being last year, being 2022.
Right, correct, being 2022. I think they're going to kind of play it safe with a guy like that, especially being 23 years old. He's going to have to pitch well and going to have to make well over 100 innings in starts.
Yeah, and here's the other thing that you have to factor in here. He could pitch really well and still not be needed.
Yeah.
He could pitch really well and there's just no spot for him.
That's very possible.
Which then also leads to, if he pitches well enough being a lefty, could the Orioles package him at the deadline?
Oh, easily.
For their missing piece. Maybe their missing piece is, I don't know, Jose Abreu with the who's he playing with?
Astros.
The Astros. The Astros aren't going to be willing to trade him. They're going to be too good, and he's going to be a big part of that offense.
Yeah, I would agree.
Or maybe
there's plenty of guys out there.
Maybe JD Martinez with the Dodgers.
Sure,
somebody that could fit in for you in the middle of your order and be an impact bat down the stretch for you. And we have no idea who could. And the Dodgers are going to be good too. They're going to be right there. And if JD Martinez is having a good year for them, they're not going to be willing to part with him. So who knows? Those are just off the top of my head, guys. But Drew Rom could be a factor for the Orioles in multiple ways this year. Oh, yeah. But let's not get out over our feet here. He's just making the first start in the Grapefruit League action for the Orioles today. Probably go an inning unless he's really efficient in the first and come out for the second.
I believe it was Spencer Watkins last year, if I remember correctly. So it is probably someone they have in their plans, most likely. Maybe Drew Rom is in their plans this year at some point.
Spencer Watkins was a really effective pitcher for the Orioles for about a 10 or 11 start stretch last year, so that's not to be taken for granted. Jackson Holliday, Orioles #1 overall pick in the draft last year, just 19 years old. He is in camp with an invite to spring training. Just 20 pro games under his belt, and he's already in big league camp. Yeah. He's got that baby face, right? He looks like he's about 15 years old. But from what I'm hearing, 6'1", 175 pounds, his body composition, this dude looks like a man physically, right? And so Brandon Hyde has been really talking him up. So is Mike Elias. Brandon Hyde saying that he's got a special ability and a lot of talent. Mike Elias said we wouldn't have him here if we didn't think he could handle it. This is a kid whose dad was a 7-time All-Star, a 4-time Silver Slugger. He spent a lot of time in big league spring training.
Yep.
So not really anything new for him.
Sure.
You know that he's not getting starstruck. He's probably thinking it's cool to be playing with Adley Rutschman and Gunnar Henderson during the spring and all these other guys, but he's not starstruck. You know that much. No. And he's going to get an opportunity to play here in the early Grapefruit League games.
Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to seeing what he can do. I expect him to look overmatched. I do. I expect him to look overmatched unless he's getting in late in the game and he's playing guys who are more on his level. But if he's facing off against AA guys later in games and he's producing, that's something to keep an eye on.
Sure. I mean, even a Drew Rom type guy, someone like Drew Rom could probably, he'd overmatch him in some cases. But then again, I think Jackson could hold his own. And he's a #1 overall pick. And these guys are so advanced. Yes, he's a high school bat, but Jackson Holliday was producing at an unreal level in high school against a lot of guys in his state that were probably throwing 90+ with decent breaking stuff. There's always good high school players, to come out of the state he came out of. So to me, he probably has faced some good competition. He already did a little bit last year
in low A.
In low A. So he's got a little bit of experience to build on. And there's some players, like you said, that are probably a little bit lower tier guys that he can face off against and hold his own, and even the higher tier guys. I'm not saying someone like a Grayson Rodriguez he'd have a lot of success against, but some of these, AA, AAA guys that are on the lower tier side of things, I think Jackson could certainly hold his own. He's a #1 overall pick with an incredible amount of talent, an incredible amount of upside. So he's going to hold his own, and I think that's why they picked him. I mean, he's a complete package, but obviously there's a lot of learning, a lot of building for him to do in the next 3 years.
And it would certainly be nice to see. My microphone was falling off the table. It would certainly be nice to be able to watch him. Yeah. But Masson's only televising 4 games this spring. And even Dan Connolly of The Athletic, been on the show a few times, even he said he thinks it's just a matter of ownership being cheap. There's no reason, especially with how much excitement is around the ball club, there's no reason not to televise 8, 10, 12.
At least the home games.
Yeah,
right?
Why can't you televise all the home games? Or at least all the home games from the second week of March on? Why can't you do that? And the fact of the matter is, they don't want to pay their broadcasters to go down there. They don't want to pay the cost of televising these games. John Angelos, God, have you ever seen a more prominent figure with bigger foot and mouth disease? Like, have you ever seen this?
No comment.
No, you're a B word.
No, I think it's pretty common for owners to be the way that John Angelos is. I think that's a pretty common thing. I mean, you see Steve Bisciotti. In his case, he will not talk about a lot of the things that I think the media wants to talk about either, and he delegates a lot to Eric DeCosta and Dick Cass as the team spokespeople.
That's not necessarily what I'm talking about.
Okay,
what I'm talking about is saying stuff like, my priority is making sure we get the concerts in Camden Yards and making sure that we get this in Camden Yards, and then focusing on winning. And it's like, it should be the reverse order. It should be focus on winning first, because
I agree with you.
That's ultimately what's going to bring all the revenue back to your ball club and be a bigger part for the city. Is the Orioles playing 81 meaningful home games?
Yeah,
that's what's going to be big for your franchise and ultimately for your wallet. And then saying stuff like, well, we could televise the spring training games, but at the cost of regular season games. So basically, what he's saying is, well, we can't televise spring games because then we can't televise all of the well, what about the 4 games that are going to be on Apple TV that you can't televise anyway? Just add those 4 games to your spring training schedule and boom, there, fixed. You're welcome. I'll take my $150,000 for that idea.
I bet you will.
Just put me on payroll. Honestly, they used to televise 7 or 8.
They did.
They used to, and now they used COVID as a reason not to. But now that's done.
I remember, though, even the year before that, in 19, I don't believe they televised more than like 3 or 4. Because I remember specifically watching the Orioles on Yes Network, because I used to have Yes Network for some weird reason. I had Nesson, too, the Red Sox network, and I was watching some of those spring training games because the Orioles didn't broadcast them. So that was the only way you really could get them was through other teams' networks.
Well, I have MLB TV. So I'm going to... Hopefully, there's a lot of games being televised on MLB TV that I can check out. And I don't know. It's just, I feel like if the Pittsburgh Pirates can televise every game, you can televise all the games.
Believe me, I don't disagree. I was on GCR yesterday, and we talked about this, and Stan wasn't that upset about it. He thinks that there's a lot of people, especially being a lot of these games are in the middle of the week. There's a lot of people at work, can't really watch it.
True.
So it's almost like they're not really going to make that much money if they do, and they're probably wasting money, broadcasting a 1:00 game on a Wednesday, if that makes sense. So I get that point. I like that part of it from Stan's perspective.
No, that is a fair point, because literally as I was talking to you, I was thinking to myself, well, if I'm at work,
right,
from
exactly.
8 a.m. to 5 p.m., 6 p.m., 7 p.m., I can't watch these games anyway.
Right.
But then, if that's the case, you can still televise every Saturday and Sunday home game.
As it should be, yes.
You should televise every Saturday and Sunday home game. You absolutely should. And if you're televising, look, they can't air the games while they're happening because of Masson, right? MLB TV can't do that. But people can get off work and come home and be like, you know what? I want to watch the Orioles game from today and go and watch it later on. Which is
no doubt.
I'm probably going to do that a lot this spring. So I just feel like they should make a better effort to televise more than just 4 games. You mentioned Grayson Rodriguez and how Jackson Holliday, sure, he's not going to produce against a guy like Grayson Rodriguez, but nobody's going to produce well against Grayson Rodriguez. From what I'm hearing, from what I heard on 105.7 the other day from Dan Connolly, I'm going to reference him a fair bit in this show today. He is clearly has better stuff than everybody else in camp. From what Connolly said, he's been looking incredible. It's looking like he's going to be in the opening day rotation, barring an injury.
You would have to think.
You would have to think if he's healthy and productive all spring, which we expect him to be, he's going to be in the opening day rotation. Another guy, Cade Povich, who came over in the Jorge Lopez trade. Apparently, he's been flashing some brilliant stuff down there. He's a lefty. You're talking about you need a left-handed pitching. Look, he only got to high A last year, so he's not factoring into the big league plans this year. But if he pitches well, he could make it to Bowie maybe after the first month or so of the season, maybe end the year with a handful of starts at Norfolk. Your thoughts on Cade Povich? I don't really know what kind of pitch mix he has. I got to be honest with you. I don't know much about him, but I've heard that he has been spectacular.
Yeah, I've yet to see him in person, but I do know that the Bowie numbers last year were not too exciting. 6.94 ERA when he came over to the Orioles. I don't believe he pitched. Oh, he did pitch 2 games in Aberdeen to a 0 ERA. So he does have about 8 games under his belt. But I haven't yet gotten to see him in person. When I do that, it will be definitely a better analysis of what this guy is. But I do know that the Orioles like to target high velo, high spin guys like Cade Povich, and especially being a lefty, it's pretty interesting that he could definitely factor in at some point, either late this season, early next season. It's very possible, given the fact that he's already in Bowie and he could easily make a jump to Norfolk. And if they need him down the line, again, it's that lefty, and lefties get promoted a lot quicker because they are lefties. Nick Vespi is a great example.
Well, and then you look at the Jorge Lopez and Trey Mancini trades, and sure, people were upset. And the Orioles bullpen was impacted by losing Jorge Lopez because they didn't replace him with anybody. They just kind of said, okay, next in line from what we already have. He wasn't replaced by anybody.
Right.
But he didn't pitch well for the Twins.
No.
He was mediocre at best for them. Trey hit a couple of home runs in his first game. I think he hit 6 home runs in like his first 15 games.
He did, yeah.
With the Astros, but the batting average was well below 200. Trey's best days are behind him. I love Trey. People let their heart and their emotions and their feelings towards Trey the person get in the way of Trey the player.
Yes.
And the fact that the Orioles were able to get, for Trey Mancini and Jorge Lopez, Cade Povich, Seth Johnson, and is it Chas McDermott?
Yes.
Chas McDermott?
Believe so.
Or is it Chase McDermott?
I feel like it's Chas, but I don't know. I'm not 100% sure. I can look it up.
But the fact that they were able to get 3 guys who could end up being impact pitchers at the big league level
it is Chase McDermott.
For those 2 guys, it was impressive. And the fact that Cade Povich is dazzling down there right now, maybe we should expect big things from him at Bowie this year. I thought he would start at high A, so he's probably going to start at Bowie this year.
Yeah.
Seth Johnson's still recovering. He'll probably start throwing towards the end of this year, towards the end of the season, and then be ready for spring training next year. And Chase McDermott is not that far away from being somebody that could help the Orioles, at least out of their bullpen. Did he get AAA time this past year, or was it all at Bowie?
I don't believe so.
Okay. No. These could be guys that could help the Orioles. So the pitching is looking good to start down at AAA, down at spring training for sure. Cedric Mullins, by all reports, is absolutely tearing it up down there. And now, look, he's probably a month ahead of everybody else because he had to, because the World Baseball Classic's coming up here in just a couple of weeks. But he's been barreling a lot, line drives everywhere. He's been showing power and against left-handed pitching, which is something we know he worked on extensively this offseason, because he went from, 277 against lefties in 2021 to 209 against them in 2022. So I think that's something he's putting a lot of focus on. We're going to talk about him a little bit later in the show. But actually, you know what? Because we're doing something different for Orioles Banter, something different than I have in my notes, we can talk about him a little bit right now. How big of a season could the Orioles have if out of their leadoff spot they have 2021 Cedric Mullins? And 2022 Cedric Mullins is a 3.5-win player.
Yeah.
2021 Cedric Mullins is about a 6-win player.
Yeah.
And you're talking a 30-30 guy with about a 290 batting average. Even if they get somewhere in between where maybe he's a 275 guy with 24 home runs and 30 to 40 stolen bases, how big of a year could this offense have with Cedric Mullins setting the table like that?
It's almost indescribable what he would do. A year like last year would be very productive, and he was very productive last year. He did a lot of great things, especially defensively, but also at the plate. The left-handed pitching has to get better. He's got to be able to hit that. It's a huge part of being a leadoff spot. Guys that you can really face off against anything, and you saw Brandon Hyde drop him to 8 or 9 a few times when Ryan McKenna was in the lineup, because Ryan McKenna ended up hitting something like over 300 against lefties. So Cedric Mullins has to improve there. We know that. And he has to get back to what he was in 2021 against left-handed pitching. That's the biggest thing. And if he does, he's going to set the table for Gunnar Henderson as a 2-hitter, and Adley Rutschman as a 3-hitter, hopefully Ryan Mountcastle as a 4-hitter, and, of course, Anthony Santander, other guys behind him. So he would do a lot if he was able to get on base at a, 340, 345 clip. He's got to improve against lefties. and this could be a very good season. Even if he's a 2020, a 2025 guy, where he homers 20 times, steals 25, that would be extremely productive as long as the on-base percentage is a little better than it was last year.
Yeah, and getting back to Ryan McKenna real quick, he did not hit over 300.
He didn't against lefties?
He hit 270.
Oh, did he? Okay.
There was a nice stretch in the season where he was batting over 300 against them from one point to another. Kind of like a Jorge Mateo type of stretch, but for the season he was 270 against left-handed pitching. Today's show brought to you by your local Toyota dealers. The Toyota Tacoma comes in a range of models and trim lines. You can choose the perfect Tacoma to reflect your unique personality and driving habits. Go check out buyatoyota.com for deals on new Tacomas from your local Toyota dealer today. Coming up on the show, we have Stan the Fan Charles here in a matter of moments for his weekly segment, and then a little bit later in the 11 o'clock hour, we're going to have from the Florida Prospect Report, Eric Garfield, who's been down there every day of spring training. He's got an eye on all the prospects, all the Orioles players. He's going to talk about some of the good and some of the bad that he's seen down there in AAA. AAA. Why do I keep doing that? In spring training. But before we do that, on the line with us now, Stan the Fan Charles. Stan, good morning. How are you?
Good morning, guys. How you doing?
Doing well. Super excited because it's the start of Grapefruit League action for the Orioles today, Stan. They're going at 1 o'clock this afternoon against the Minnesota Twins from Ed Smith Stadium down in Sarasota. Orioles protected Drew Rom from the Rule 5 draft by adding him to the 40-man roster. He gets the ball today, saying it's already a crowded rotation. I think it's 100% likelihood that he's going to start the year in Norfolk. Do you think that simply by pitchability alone, that Drew Rom can pitch his way onto the Orioles team at some point this year?
I think it would, I think his pitchability, how he's doing down there, and what's taking place up here. It's not just simply his pitchability, how he's doing, whether he's sporting a 3.7 ERA or a 4.4. There has to be an opening. And you would think by the time that opening might occur for him to be a starting pitcher with the Orioles, that would mean there was some other injury or really poor performance somewhere along the line.
I agree. I was saying to Zach in the opening of the show that for Drew Rom to get an opportunity, like you just said, not only does he have to be pitching well, there has to be a spot for him. And for there to be a spot, something not great has to be going on. You always want that depth. You need it to get through a big league season. But if Drew Rom isn't pitching here, it's probably a good thing, honestly, at this point. Now, Cedric Mullins, apparently, Stan, from what we're hearing, he's been squaring up a lot down in Sarasota during spring training. He's got about a month head start on everybody else because he had to prepare himself for the World Baseball Classic. What are your expectations for Cedric Mullins this year? If he can get back to hitting lefties well, how big is he for this Orioles offense being at the top of the order and setting the table?
Well, that is one of the benefits you worry about with the World Baseball Classic. You worry a little bit about your people potentially getting hurt. And then there's also the potential that they could burn out later in the season because they've ramped up, earlier than usual. But the good part of it is, he's going to be playing at a high level of competition and probably playing more intensely than a lot of the players that are playing in spring training games. So that bodes well for a good start. It would mean a lot to this team if, I don't think we're going to see 30 home runs out of Cedric again. But I think we could see 40, 45 steals. And if he hits 275 and he's on base 330, it would be huge for us.
Yeah, I certainly agree, especially now that you're going to have a full year. Go ahead.
I'm not predicting those exact numbers, but that would seem, maybe 15 to 17 home runs, 45 steals, a 265, 270 average overall. But you're right, it is important that he be able to plug in, against left-handed, pitching. He's got to do better than he did last year.
Absolutely. He went from about 277 in 2021 to 209 against left-handed pitching in 2022. Yeah. It seems like that's something that he's been working on. He took live BP against Cole Irvin and took him deep. So that's something that's worth keeping an eye on and factoring in. And Stan, for what it's worth, my prediction for him, I'm not saying yours was a prediction, but I said 275, maybe around 20 to 24 home runs and 40 steals is going to be a big year for Cedric Mullins and big for this team. So I think you and I are on the same page there. Now, another outfielder is Austin Hayes, and I haven't heard anything about Austin Hayes to this point, Stan. With him, is no news good news, and is his seat the hottest of the outfielders?
Well, I don't think there's any question he's sort of got the hottest seat, and I find it interesting that the Orioles are still in the Jurickson Profar. At least they're keeping some avenue of discussion. So it gets down to don't watch what we say, watch what we do.
Sure.
With the Orioles, they're not. You're not hearing much about Hayes, but I'm not. It's not a big deal to me because there's about 45 days down there for the writers, and they'll get around to an Austin Hayes day one day, and all of a sudden Rock will be talking about him and Rich will be talking about him. So I'm not worried that they're not talking about him yet because there's nothing really to talk about. But the actions of the Orioles will speak louder than anything you and I can discern right now from a lack of comment on him. If they sign Jurickson Profar, that's not good news for Austin Hayes as an everyday Oriole player.
And how likely do you think it is that Jurickson Profar could be playing in an Orioles uniform? I know it's hard to put a number on that, Stan, but do you think that that's something that is a good possibility?
I don't know enough about it. I'm not an investigative reporter that's working sources or anything like that, but it does get mentioned, and he still is out there. And you wouldn't think that his asking price can be particularly that high right now. Maybe a $3 or $4 million piece, and he's good protection. Let's say Hayes is playing very well, but you got Profar, and all of a sudden Cedric Mullins gets hurt. I know you want to ask me later on because we communicate through. You tell me the areas you want to talk about. The most intriguing guy for this year that I'm interested in seeing how he does is probably Kyle Stowers.
Okay.
And whether he really belts his way into being somebody that can pressure Hayes' position and also possibly play a little center field.
And I'm glad you bring up Kyle Stowers because we had Keith Law on the show a few weeks ago, and we asked him about Kyle Stowers, and he said he can't hit. Has that big looping swing. He's swinging like it's 3-0, 3-1 on every pitch. Do you have maybe a little bit more confidence in Kyle Stowers than Keith Law does because he doesn't have much?
No, I would not say at this point in time I have a great deal of confidence in him. But I'm anxious to see how he really is going about his business in a full camp with a full shot at making a major league club. And again, he's a guy greatly impacted because the fact that they would get Profar doesn't mean that Austin Hayes is suddenly a bench player, but it really that DH position on the Orioles is also open. There's no specific one guy that's going to DH every day. And certainly Profar, if he's playing well, can get at bats there as well, but it would not bode that well for Stowers either if they go out and get Profar.
Especially when you think about the fact that Colton Cowser is a hot start at Norfolk away from making his way to the big league level. I don't think he'd be here in the first month or two, but if it's June or July and he's tearing the cover off the ball and the Orioles left fielder is struggling, whoever it is, Colton Cowser could be here by mid-season, and that doesn't bode well either, especially if Profar is brought into the equation. Grayson, go ahead.
And that might be an impact on whether they want to go to $3 or $4 million for Jurickson Profar. Is that, hey, we're just 3 months away from having somebody we really like. It's interesting. I'm doing my research for fantasy baseball, so I'm going through a lot of Keith Law's writing. And I thought it was Keith Law, but somewhere along the last 4 or 5 days, I read somebody on one of the sites that really is not impressed with Colton Cowser. My eyebrows raised, and last night I was working through the Oriole prospects again, and I said, let me see what Law actually said about him, why he doesn't like him. And it turned out he liked him. It was somebody else, another prospect writer, really thought he was more like a marginal fourth outfielder, and I never had known that.
Keith Law was the only one to keep him off his top 100 prospects list. He was the first one mentioned in Just Missed for the top 100, and he said, and when we talked to him, he said, look, he can't hit lefties. He thinks that he's going to be.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
You know what I might have read? I might have actually accidentally gone to his 2022 profile. Somebody was saying that he can't hit left-handers.
Yes, he
so sees him more like a platoon, like a very good platoon player.
That's what he.
I don't think that's what they expected out of their first round pick.
Yeah, when you take somebody fifth overall, you want him to be an everyday impact player for you. And Keith Law says he can't hit lefties. He thinks his ceiling is a solid everyday player, but more than likely he ends up being a platoon outfielder in his mind. It's up to Colton Cowser, just like Cedric Mullins against lefties. It's up to Colton Cowser to prove that he can hit lefties. People were saying the same thing about Gunnar Henderson, that he can't hit lefties, and he's the number one prospect in baseball. So it's all about what you do on the field. And again, it also goes to Kyle Stowers too. Can you prove that you can do it? And they're going to get every opportunity to. Now, somebody who's been proving it for quite a while now for the Orioles, at least through their system, that they can do it, is Grayson Rodriguez. Stan, reportedly, he's been impressive. I was listening to Dan Connolly on the radio yesterday, and he said that Grayson is clearly better than all the other pitchers in camp. He expects him to be the Orioles' number 5 starter and make his big league and season debut against Texas in the second series of the season. With that in mind, we want to temper our expectations, but what are realistic expectations for Grayson Rodriguez this season? And does the high praise that's seemingly coming from every source heighten the expectations?
Well, there's definitely a high level of expectation with him in terms of results. The question is, what will his body of work be this year? This is not somebody that we're talking about plugging 180 or 190 innings and 33 starts. I think the expectations, his wins may be down because of how he's used. There may be early in the season, if pitch count gets a little away from him, I could see him being pulled after 3 or 4 innings in games that you would like to see him go 5 or 6. I don't expect that he'll go more than 6 innings this season in games more than a large handful. Maybe 8 or 9 times this year. I think they're going to be very careful on that innings count, and with him, don't just watch innings, watch pitch count within games. So I think, though, that given that, I think the ERA and WHIP should be pretty good, because one of the things he's going to have to learn as he goes along, because he's been treated with pretty much kid gloves all along, is how to get, if he's really going to be a top of the rotation starter, by 2025, you want to be seeing him near 200 innings and making 33 starts and going deeper into games. And that's not always the best thing for the player's numbers, because the more times he faces hitters the third time, he's going to have to learn how to get hitters out that third time. He's basically been, like I said, treated with kid gloves, which means a lot of those numbers are almost like relief pitcher numbers.
Yeah.
When you throw 3 innings, you should, if you're a really top pitching prospect, you should dominate the first time around the order. It's the second and third times that he's going to have to navigate, and that will come with refining his pitch selection, whether he can really get his command down and things of that nature. So I'm not expecting the world, but I'd like to see an ERA, given how few innings he'll pitch. I would think 3.3 is about the highest I would want to see out of him. And with the potential, it could be like 2.7, 2.8 because of how few innings he'll pitch.
Yeah, you look back to Mike Mussina. In his first full season, ERA was well below 3. and this was somebody who was just as highly touted as Grayson Rodriguez. Now, Mussina, you can make the argument that was the best season of his career, was 1992 when he became a full-time starter for the first time.
But he had not been treated, not that he was in the minors that long, but he wasn't treated the way that they've treated Grayson Rodriguez.
No,
there were 6 and 7 inning starts back in those days.
That's true. They put a lot less focus on pitchers, innings, and all that back then. There's more focus now. And for Grayson, and it stinks because it's not really his fault either. He was drafted in 2018. He had 2019. It's his first full season, so they're not going to unleash him. 2020, there's no minor league season. 2021, he's building up from having missed the previous season.
That's a excellent point. Excellent point.
And then last year,
the pandemic.
Last year's supposed to be the ramp up, and then he misses 3 months. Literally, his last AAA start, he gets injured and he misses 3 months. So it's been just.
He probably would have thrown 130, 140 total innings.
I think so too.
Not gotten hurt last year. Between Major League and AAA, he probably would have gotten around that.
I agree.
Which is where I would have liked to seen him last year, and not get the injury. So we'll see. We'll see. Now, fingers crossed, because he is a real tremendous talent.
He absolutely is. Yeah, and everybody in Baltimore is waiting with bated breath to see him make his debut, and we think it's going to be to start the year. So we'll see how Grayson Rodriguez does. A lot of expectations there. Somebody else with expectations.
I will say one thing about him. To me, he is sort of the wild card on whether the Orioles really can contend for that wild card spot this year. Is if he is right at the level we're talking about performance-wise, and they can squeeze a few more innings out of him in starts. I mean, and lessen the load on the bullpen. But that's why a guy like Both or somebody else, maybe at some point Bowman or Rom, is sort of a piggyback companion to him. And can get you to the 7th or 8th inning where your bullpen takes over. Sure. I'm not saying Rodriguez, but he goes 5 innings, and then you're looking at like 2 innings from Both or something like that. That would be really ideal.
Especially early in the year, without having Dylan Tate, you kind of minimize the need for a Dylan Tate for that first month. If you have Grayson going 3 or 4, and then somebody like a Voth or a Tyler Wells comes in and takes you into the 7th inning, that really helps the ball club. A lot of big things that are revolving around Grayson Rodriguez and his inclusion on this roster.
Yep.
So,
no question about it.
Now, Jackson Holliday, not a factor for the Orioles this year. Probably not next year either. We're probably thinking 2025 for him. But he's just 19 years old, Stan, still has the baby face, and he's been invited to spring training. He's been down there. A lot of glowing praise from Brandon Hyde, saying he has special ability and a lot of talent. Again, he has the baby face, but for all intents and purposes, physically imposing, 6'1", 175 pounds, and from what we hear, just solid muscle. Elias says he's there because they think he can handle it. What do you think the importance is of his being there at just 19 years old with just 20 pro games under his belt?
I think it's important in terms of growing the type of player he should be. I think it's important to kind of throw a guy like that in the deep water a little bit, knowing and feeling like this guy he innately knows how to swim. And that's sort of a metaphor for what I'm saying. This guy is going to figure things out. He's a very, very special talent, and he's going to be an Oriole for a long time. And I agree with you on the time frame. I would think when we're talking about spring training 2025, we're going to be talking about him as a potential to either start the season or that he's very close. We'll see. We talked about I'm anxious to see Stowers. I'm anxious when I get down there. I hope he's still with the team and I get to see him in a couple game situations. And I trust I will.
Are you heading down there the first week of March, correct?
I'm going the 7th of March. So the first game I will see will be the 8th of March against Pittsburgh. at Ed Smith Stadium.
All right. Well, that should be a great time for you. I know you really look forward to your annual trips down there. So,
haven't done it since 2020.
Yeah, I remember you leaving to go do that.
Went down just at the beginning of the pandemic.
Yeah, and that was when you almost got killed by a home run ball out there by Boogs in left field, right?
That's right.
I remember. I remember it well.
Got a good memory.
And before we let you go, Stan, you already mentioned Kyle Stowers as a player that you're keeping an eye on. Are there any other players, any other pitchers, or maybe both, that you are interested in seeing once you get down there?
I'm interested in seeing how this whole thing is going to work out with the bullpen, trying to figure out how far Bautista is away from being able to help the team, and whether or not my suggestion that they moved Wells to the pen and have Voth as either the sixth starter or the swing man that sort of piggybacks on the days that Grayson pitches. I'm anxious to see how the pitching is getting ready for the season.
Yeah, that's something we're all keeping an eye on, because I think that's going to be able to tell the tale of the 2023 Baltimore Orioles is just their rotation and their bullpen and how well they pitch, because ultimately pitching wins championships, right, Stan?
Yep. Ultimately it does, and I left out one player that I think we're all curious on who is the real Ryan Mountcastle.
Yep.
I alluded to Grayson Rodriguez as sort of the pivotal player, the pivotal pitcher on whether or not the Orioles have depth in the pitching staff, starting staff, to really maintain contention throughout the year. I would think we'd all agree that Mountcastle has to be the player that they estimate he can be, and that includes, being somewhat more selective at the plate. That's the whole key. And it's interesting, Paul, real quick. I know you got other things you got to get to, but I'm reading all these players. I'm reading all the Keith Law stuff, and it mostly boils down to that: is pitch recognition, discipline at the plate. That's what separates fair from good and good from great. The better you get at that, and I would say he fails pretty miserably at it at this point in his career.
Yeah, and there's no doubt about that, Stan.
It doesn't mean his overall numbers fail, but he's in between fair and good, and he's got the ability to be much better than that.
He absolutely does.
Yeah,
we saw it all throughout his minor league career, and it would be if he had a bad showing one season at a particular level, the next year he came out that same level and was gangbusters. He won a Triple A league MVP award. The talent is there. He's got to have the better pitch selection and plate discipline. For what it's worth, a lot of pundits are expecting a big season out of Ryan Mountcastle, and if he puts a big season, the Orioles are going to go a long way.
Yeah. No question about it.
All right, Stan,
right, guys.
You're coming off a big...
Have a good one.
What do you got coming up this coming week?
Monday, Rick Dempsey joins Ross Grimsley and I at 6 o'clock. And then Thursday, we got the new football coach at Towson University, Pete Shinnick.
Oh, sounds like a good one, Stan. We will be sure to tune in. You have a great week. Talk to you next weekend.
Thank you very much, guys. Bye.
See you. And that was Stan the Fan Charles, who continues to have two great shows for you every week. Every Monday night, Stan and former Orioles pitcher Ross Grimsley visit with a different guest from the world of baseball. And every Thursday night, Stan and Gary Stein chat with a different newsmaker from the world of sports. This week, Stan and Ross chatted with the great Ben McDonald, while Stan and Gary caught up with new UMBC soccer coach Anthony Adams. You can find those shows under the videos tab at facebook.com/PressBoxSports or at PressBoxOnline.com/video. Stan and Ross are back on Monday with another great show with Orioles legend Rick Dempsey. You don't want to miss that. Also, want to remind you that today's first hour of the Bat Around is brought to you by Birdland Sports. O's fans, did you know that one of your fellow fans is the owner of Birdland Sports? That's right. Josh Soroka from the Section 336 podcast is behind Birdland Sports. He knows what fellow fans want and has created an amazing collection of merchandise just for you. From the popular Birds Are Coming tees to unique player cartoon shirts and World Series prediction designs, Birdland Sports has everything you need to show off your O's pride. With prices more affordable than the big guys, you can support a small business run by one of your own. So don't wait. Head to birdlandsports.com today today and show your support for the birds with Birdland Sports. When we come back in, we're going to talk a little bit more about the Orioles roster before we have Eric Garfield from Florida Prospect Report. That's next here on the Bat Around.
There's something for everyone this February at Laurel Park. Come watch live horse racing every Friday through Sunday and join us on Saturday, February 18th for the Winter Stakes Spectacular featuring 6 stakes races and $900,000 in purses, including the General George and Barbara Fritchie Stakes. The fun doesn't stop there. Stick around for our Winter Mardi Gras celebration with live music, delicious food and drinks, and a carnival atmosphere. Plus, don't miss out on President's Day holiday racing on Monday, February 20th. Visit laurelpark.com for more info. That's laurelpark.com for more. See you at the track.
Gambling can be a fun and entertaining experience, but there are risks involved. If you're planning on betting on the game at the casino or on your phone or computer, know your limit, stay within it. Set a budget and a time to stop. Remember, gambling isn't a financial solution, and it doesn't mix well with alcohol or drugs. Know the risks and have a plan before you begin gambling. For free and confidential services, call 1-800-GAMBLER 24/7 or go to helpmygamblingproblem.org.
The latest edition of Press Box is available now. On the cover, Luke Jackson profiles Orioles phenom Gunnar Henderson, breaking down how he was able to become the top prospect in baseball at such a young age and what could be next in his first full MLB season. Also inside, we meet lacrosse players from the men's and women's college programs across the state, and Bo Smoka breaks down another year of wide receiver issues for the Ravens. Press Box is available for free at over 500 area locations, including 60 Royal Farm stores, and you can always find the entire edition, as well as the best daily coverage of the Orioles, Ravens, and Terps at PressBoxOnline.com.
That first sip. That first bite. Start your day off right with a delicious breakfast at Royal Farms. Choose from a fantastic selection of fresh Royal Farms breakfast sandwiches and top it off with a rich hot cup of the freshest coffee in the world. At Royal Farms, breakfast is available day and night. It's the freshest breakfast in the world. Real fresh, real fast. Royal Farms.
Stan the Fan here, welcoming back one of my favorite sponsors, the Costas Inn. And everybody around Baltimore knows the Costas Inn is a great place to go and grab crabs, steaks, salads, soups, whatever's on your mind to eat in person. But did you know that the Costas Inn has upped their game? They are now one of the premier takeout places in Baltimore. Give them a call now to order your food, 410-477-1975. That's the Costas Inn over 4100 North Point Boulevard.
All right, welcome back into the Batter. I'm rolling right along here on today's show. Really good show so far to this point. Want to remind you today's show is brought to you by PressBox Online. Baseball betting is here. Bet $5 with DraftKings and get $200 in instant bonus bets, along with other great incentives and promos when you sign up at PressBoxOnline.com/offers. Baseball futures bets, season specials, and player awards bets are already live in Maryland. Go to PressBoxOnline.com/offers now for your shot at winning big. All right, so I'll leave this to you, Zach. Do you want to do your sounding off segment now, or do you want to kind of do some players that this season kind of, because we got into it a little bit with Stan. I think we should do your sounding off now.
Sure.
And then after we do our little fun thing on Orioles banter later in the show, we'll talk about the season players that the season hinges on the most for the Orioles this year. So what do you got? You have a good one, and we have about 10 minutes to talk about it, so that's good.
Perfect. So, yeah, I was on GCR yesterday, and my tidbit for the day was that $3 billion annually is what it would take for all of the MLB games to be broadcast under one network, under the MLB umbrella, if that were the way they would go. Right now, obviously, there's regional networks everywhere, and I think 14 of them are under the Bali Sports Network, which now has apparently gone bankrupt, which is a big problem for them, and they're trying to figure out how they're going to do that. And there's obviously the more localized ones like MASN, NESN, Yes, which only really broadcast one or two teams across the country, and you just have a lot of localized, regionalized sports networks that generally broadcast through cable. That's the way that we've kind of done this for a very long time now, is right through cable. Streaming options have been kind of limited, and if you're in your market and you want to get MLB TV and watch your team, you can't because there's blackout restrictions. So there's been a lot of conversation. I've talked about this with you before, that the blackout restrictions suck. Everyone knows that. The blackout restrictions limit who can watch the game, where they can watch the game, how they can watch the game. The streaming options are still terrible. MASN released an app last year. Yes Network has an app. NESN has an app. Everyone's got an app. The Bali Sports Networks, but they just don't work that well. Usually they're well behind. You're on the MASN app. If you're not like 9 pitches behind, you're probably
on average, from what I've seen.
It's about 9 pitches behind.
No, it's 4.
4? Really?
It's 4 pitches behind.
Maybe my internet's slow.
But
I don't know.
4 pitches behind before the implementation of the pitch clock this year. So there's a good chance it could be 9.
Right. There is a drastic need for standardized streaming. Mm-hmm. Drastic need for it. And MLB.com and MLB TV, all of that is what I would consider standardized streaming. It's all under one umbrella, but blackout restrictions make it so that's basically useless for so many people. Me and you being the same way. I am someone who does not have cable. I live in an apartment that does not have cable. I pay for other services to try to watch the Orioles, but I still don't get the Orioles through anything else but the MASN app. That's the only way I can watch the Orioles. And, Hulu is not an option. Any of the regular streaming services do not carry MASN or any of the other regional sports networks. So the problem is for me is that I'm like a lot of other people where we're cord cutting, we don't have cable, and we want to watch these baseball teams. There needs to be a way for everything to get under one umbrella and make it make financial sense for MLB, of course, and make it make financial sense for consumers. I mean, we don't want to be paying $200 to watch just one network and one team every year, but make it so that blackout restrictions are gone. That's the first thing. But also standardize this at a higher level. Standardize streaming, but also keep cable around for the people who want to watch cable. And make this so that everyone has the ability to watch their team when they want to watch the team. This is a problem that directly affects me, and this is one of the things that I've been looking at for years is how can I watch the Orioles without having cable? And it just isn't a good experience. No one wants to be 4 pitches behind. No one. No. So they need to create a standardized system for all of this that works. And honestly, I think they'd get a twofold more viewership than they do right now. There would be a drastic increase in who watches baseball and probably the demographics that watch baseball. We've talked so much about how they fail to market players and how, there really isn't a young population watching baseball. The average viewer is like 60 years old at this point, which is a huge problem for baseball. And if they standardize this, they make streaming better and they make it with more options and they make it more efficient and easy for consumers, everyone's going to start being more appreciative of what the game has to offer, and there's going to be more viewership. I guarantee it. So that's my piece on this topic.
No, I 100% agree with you, and I really hate being 4 pitches behind, which it will probably be more like 9 this year because of the pitch clock. I really hate that, especially when you're live tweeting. Right? If you're watching the game and everybody's tweeting what they see, and it's like you go to tweet because Ryan Mountcastle just hit a home run, or you're tweeting about the previous thing, and Ryan Mountcastle hits a home run, and people are talking about it, and you still have to wait 4 more pitches before you see that. Yeah, it sucks, and it ruins the game experience for you if you want look. You don't have to be on social media while you're watching the game, but let's be realistic about this. A lot of us are. Yeah. Whether if we're excited because something great's happening or we're pissed off because something terrible's happening, we're on social media, we're talking about it. Yeah. And in this day and age, especially if you want to do shows like this, you have to be. Right. People have come to expect it. How are you going to be able to enjoy a game if you're behind? If you're behind everybody else.
Not only that, the regional sports model of network model, I should say, is old and antiquated. And you have all of these networks that, like MASN. MASN's a great example because we talked about this in the show yesterday, that they have shows, and they've had shows, but they haven't been necessarily successful. Even Stan had a show on MASN at one point, and they cut his show. So there needs to be a revitalization of all of this, and I think putting it under the MLB umbrella, where we don't have these regional sports networks anymore, like NESN, like MASN, I think it'd just be a lot more productive for everyone.
It would be, but then you have to factor in how much money are the teams.
$3 billion annually. That was the cost.
Right,
annually.
$3 billion annually is the cost for. Sorry, I was trying to listen to you and put some stuff together. So $3 billion is a cost annually for what would be under the MLB umbrella, or what
exactly?
That's what it would cost, right?
Yes.
So $3 billion, and what goes into those costs?
Well, that was just a tweet from one of the MLB reporters. It doesn't really say what exactly goes into that cost and how much teams are paying, how much the league is paying itself. That would obviously all be figured out in the long run, I guess, but $3 billion annually is the estimated cost that it would take, which is a huge cost, don't get me wrong, but I think between the league and between the teams themselves, they make so much money annually, as far as revenue, and now obviously it's spiking after COVID, now that attendance is coming back and merchandise sales are increasing, and TV rights deals make them incredible amounts of money anyway, so I think that cost would be pretty easily offset.
They generally make anywhere from like $11 to $15 million a year, $15 billion dollars a year, so if you take $3 billion out of that...
And then split it evenly?
Yeah, it's something that definitely should be considered. And even Rob Manfred, I almost called him Fred Manfred. Even Rob Manfred said that they are certainly, with the blackout restrictions, they are on the wrong side of the coin, as he said, from where they want to be with that. So maybe this is something that isn't far off, something that isn't so unlikely.
Clearly, they're thinking about it, and that's why I brought it up.
Something has to be done, because if I want to watch my team and if I want to watch the Orioles and I live in North Carolina, I can't watch them because I'm blacked out
for some weird reason.
And if my cable company in North Carolina doesn't carry MASN, what am I supposed to do with that?
Right.
The blackout restrictions need to go away.
Yeah.
The people are still going to watch regardless. To me, it's something needs to be done. Something needs to be done about it. You're really just alienating a whole sector of your fans because they don't have an opportunity to watch the teams that they love.
Right.
And I'll tell you, one of the things I love about MLB TV is not only can I watch teams that I'm interested. Would I like to be able to watch teams I'm interested in? I like to watch other teams, and I can't watch the Phillies down. Well, no, I can.
I believe you can. Yeah.
I can, because my stepdad is a huge Phillies fan.
Just the Nats and the O's are blacked out.
I can't. I can watch the Nats on MASN, but
correct.
But if I don't have cable, I can't watch. Like you said, if I don't have cable, I can't watch MASN.
Right.
So something absolutely needs to be done. I like to watch the Dodgers. I like to watch the Padres. I would love to watch the Mets because I love Buck and I think they have a really good team up there. The Braves. They need to do something about it. Absolutely. Yeah. I think you're spot on here. And maybe, like you said, maybe something's in the works because they certainly are. It is on their minds. They're not.
You would have to hope so. You would have to hope so.
It wouldn't make sense to not be thinking about it because you're ultimately around because of the fans, and the fans are unhappy with the product, with the product you're putting out. Yeah. Then you're not doing your job. So no, that is a good one, Zach. I certainly appreciate your efforts on that one. Coming up in just a matter of moments here on the show, we have Eric Garfield from the Florida Prospect Report. Eric is down in Sarasota every day. He lives down there, so he gets to see the Orioles prospects on a regular basis, the Orioles players on a regular basis. He's going to give us some insight into what's going on there. But before he does, I want to remind you that PressBox's Glenn Clark Radio is the definitive place to find the best daily discussion of Baltimore sports. You can watch the show every weekday from 10 to noon at youtube.com/PressBoxOnline or facebook.com/PressBoxSports, or you can listen to PressBoxOnline.com/radio with podcasts available on iTunes, Spotify, or anywhere you get your podcasts. Guys, you never know who might pop up on GCR. This week, the guys caught up with former Georgia coach and John Harbaugh's brother-in-law, Tom Crean, Jackass and Viva La Bam star Brandon Novak, and Maryland women's basketball star Shai Sellers. You can find those interviews and more right now in the Glenn Clark Radio Week in Review feature at PressBoxOnline.com. Oh, by the way, you can also find Zach Goodman, who was on the show this Friday as he was filling in for Griffin on the show. So that's even more reason to go check out Glenn Clark Radio. Moving on here on the Bat Around. Joining us now, we love having this guy on the show. He's always got really great intel on Orioles prospects, Orioles players that he sees down in spring training. From the Florida Prospect Report, he is Eric Garfield. Eric, it's Paul, it's Zach. Good morning. How are you?
Very excited. I'm about to leave in a couple minutes and go to the Orioles game. So happy Saturday and welcome back to baseball. Nice to talk to you guys.
Yeah, it's nice to talk to you. And first and foremost, before we do that, congratulations on your O's Podcast Family Feud victory. I want to offer you my sincerest apology. I was not a good loser. I was a very sore loser about that. I have very heightened expectations
not you, Paul.
For myself. I'm very competitive. You guys did a hell of a job. You lost your first round matchup and then rattled off, what was it, 6, 7 straight victories to bring home the championship there, Eric?
I think it was 7, and we're boys. You don't have to apologize. You guys were good. We really knew as we closed towards the end that it was going to be us versus you, and it was going to be very difficult. Like I can tell you, we really prepared like an athletic team. Like we knew we were going to get challenged. We knew we were going to face adversity and get things wrong that we thought we were going to get right, and we knew it would come down to the end. Really, I mean, for the people that listen, and I guess for us too, the fact that it came down to like the last question on the last matchup is really appropriate. I mean, you guys are a good team. If we would have lost you, we would have felt, cool with congratulating you. But it really was a lot of fun. So I give him the most credit to Ryan for thinking it up and executing it.
I will tell you, Ryan deserves a hell of a lot of credit. He spent a good bit of time putting that thing together, and he's already working on next offseason's Orioles Jeopardy, which I'm really, really looking forward to. I'll tell you, Eric, as long as I live, maybe not as long as I live, but for a while, I will never forgive myself for allowing us to pass on years that the Orioles won the AL East, because I'm sitting there and
Bailey somehow guessed that it was 1969. I'll never understand how he knew that.
I think it was he's just taken World Series years, right? And for me, I shook my head. No, I thought that was your third strike because I didn't realize that. I knew that 66 it was just American League and National League, and your American League regular season champion faced off against your National League season champion, regular season champion in the World Series. I wasn't sure if that was the case in 1969. I knew divisions came not too long after that. And 1969, yes, they had the American League East and West, and the same thing in the National League. And I sat there, Eric, and when we passed, I then sat there and I counted on my fingers all the years that I knew for sure that the Orioles had won the American League East, and I was like, oh my God, I got all of them. I cannot believe that we passed on this. So it was. Ultimately, I may have been upset about the subjective questions, but ultimately we lost because of an objective question that we could have gotten right and we passed on. Kudos to you guys.
The strategy is the difficult part, not the facts, not the recall. The strategy and getting it right with your decisions, that's the hard part.
Absolutely. So, again, congratulations to you and Bailey. A job well done. What a run for you guys to win the inaugural season of O's Podcast Family Feud. Maybe the only season, because I don't know how he'll come up with more questions if he ever does it again. Moving on to this year's Baltimore Orioles, Eric, you were down there every day. You're seeing all the prospects, all the players. How is the team overall looking, in your opinion?
Wow, that's a great opening question. I'm going to say incrementally better than last year, and prospects specifically. There's definite, development is full of peaks and valleys, but if you look close enough and really go every single day, watch the routines, who's doing what, you can see that there's been growth with all the big name guys that have been invited to major league camps. So I don't know if it means playoffs for the organization overall, but I definitely think that they're getting closer, and they were closer than a calendar year ago.
Eric, I'm really curious. Have you gotten the chance to see James McCann yet at all? I'm very excited to see James McCann this year, what he can possibly bring to that backup position.
I'm pretty sure that I have seen him, but I don't recognize him, so I wouldn't know him.
Fair enough.
In the cage. I know that I have seen him in drills. He has a monogrammed chest protector and leg protector. So if I zoom in, I can tell that it's him. So I've really only seen him squatting, popping up, and catching bullpens. But yeah, I mean, to have a legitimate backup to one of the, to like an MVP candidate is huge. Adley's starting today. He's not starting at catcher, so it's more than just like an interesting tidbit. We need to save this young player's legs and athletic ability, and James McCann, on a very discounted rate is the key to how that's going to happen.
Yeah, look, for me, Eric, when the Orioles went out and we knew they needed a backup catcher, we were kind of resigning ourselves to the fact it was going to be Anthony Bemboom or Maverick Hanley or Brett Cumberland or somebody like that. And then they go out and they pull off this trade for James McCann. How big is it for the Orioles to have somebody the caliber of James McCann to be their backup behind Adley?
I think it's very crucial. Like, when you're getting better, the marginal stuff has to be positive and on your side. So I think the guys that you named would be kind of maybe ranging from adequate to less than adequate, but James McCann has been a 500 at-bat player on a good team, plenty of experience, the little things, dealing with pitchers, communicating. This is a pro, not a minor leaguer transitioning to the pros. So I think it lends more than just a bit of legitimacy. He doesn't stink. He's actually kind of not that bad offensively for a backup role.
Sure.
So I think the key is going to be utilizing him effectively, not overplaying or underplaying him, just finding that balance of playing time that works for him and works for Adley's leg.
Yeah, and maybe the idea of keeping him fresh, having him not have to be that main guy behind the dish where he only has to play maybe 80 games this year between first, DH, and catcher. It'll lead to better offensive production than he had last year, where he was just like Ryan Mountcastle, he was a pretty unlucky guy at the plate. So definitely somebody that we could keep an eye on and not have to worry that, oh, great, it's a Sunday day game after a Saturday night game. Now we have Robinson Chirinos. No, you got James McCann. He's a legitimate big league catcher. So that's exciting. Now, let's get to some of these prospects here, Eric. And we'll start off with guys that we think are going to factor into this Orioles team this year. And chief among them, at least on the pitching side of things, is Grayson Rodriguez. From what we're hearing, he has better stuff than everybody else that's down there, that's a rotation candidate. A lot of people believe, including Mike Elias, that he's going to be part of the Orioles opening day rotation. Have you gotten a chance to see a lot of Grayson? How has he looked? How's the ball coming out of his hand? Because we're going to hear that a lot this spring. How does Grayson look?
That's another great question. I have seen him zoom in and post videos and stuff of him having a catch and pronating and releasing. So coming out of his hand, I'd say absolutely elite. Without question, the best in the organization, in a tier by himself. I still say better than Andrew Painter. I'm biased. Better than Yuri Perez on the Marlins. This is the best right-handed or just the best pitching prospect in the minor leagues. Haven't seen him at full go, full exertion, because those mounds are a lot. I have seen him a little, but his endurance is good. They had the simulated game just for him where he pitched an inning, sits down for 3 or 4 minutes, gets up, pitches another inning. So that was closer to 70 or 80%. All his pitches look great. His leadership is the thing that I look at all the time. He really is that guy that wants to give the speech in the locker room. That hasn't changed one bit since being injured. Everybody looks up to him, kind of because he's around. The vets are starting to look up to him, so it really is all systems go. And the more that I look at the situation, the more that I think it's so unfortunate. This guy was 20, 30, 50 pitches away from being a big leaguer 10 months ago. So for an athlete like him, making him wait even longer is just legitimate fuel to the fire. So I definitely expect when camp breaks, he'll be on the Orioles and not the Norfolk Tides. And, it's going to be a good season. He's going to, I've been listening to your whole show, he's going to get the innings that the organization requires out of him as long as he's healthy. But I think overall the innings are going to be more positive than negative.
Yeah, I agree. Stan put some lofty expectations. He said the highest ERA he wants to see from him is about 3.3, which for a rookie in this day and age, to me, that's some astronomical expectations. Yeah, it's some big expectations. You're talking about probably the best ERA on the staff from the starting rotation, if that's the case. But this is a guy who has been highly touted as that dude how unrealistic really are those expectations when you look at what Grayson Rodriguez is expected to be?
Well, I expect a lot. I expect him to successfully end at bats and strikeouts. So I'd probably be more like looking at K per nine, K per inning, K rate overall, and less walks. So, critical of what he's doing when the count gets to 3 balls. I guess, yeah, I'm going to side with you and say that, like, focusing on ERA might be tough. I'd be happy with like 4 and a quarter, 4.5 maybe, as long as he's healthy and there's, not a lot of solid contact in play for base hits against him. Those are the type of things that I'm looking at. But really, he's so young, and in that transitioning phase of development, the most important thing is for him to be in good shape and ready to continue using his arm like 10 or 11 months from now when the season is over. So I guess all those things are somewhat primary, but his health and his physical ability is the true primary objective that I'm looking at for this season. Just get through the innings, be healthy.
No,
then he can start to dominate.
Absolutely. If Grayson Rodriguez is healthy and he's getting his innings, he'll be dominant. He'll figure it out at the big league level, and he'll be dominant as early as this year. His talent, I think, is just that good. Now, there's no doubting the talent of Gunnar Henderson, number 1 overall prospect by just about every publication right now. Apparently, he showed up to camp and put on even more muscle than he had before. But you saw a little bit of a liability, I guess, early on in his defense. How's he looked defensively? How's the bat looked? And what can we expect out of Gunnar Henderson in his first full big league season?
Well, seeing Gunnar here, like, as the number 1 prospect and as kind of like a man, it really makes me think about, like, how long I've been doing this, how much I've been paying attention, because I remember when he was, like a real teenager, like not a man, like considerably younger. So watching him go from that to now, I'm really in no way surprised. I started writing about him way back when. So, yeah, he's bigger, definitely bigger in the middle, bigger in the arms, specifically like the forearms. So those are the things, that's the body parts that really drive the ball when you can impact it cleanly. So I guess in the cage, he looks good. He looks great. He kind of, from what I'm noticing, takes a little bit longer to get warmed up through practice. Like last year, he was losing a lot of the practice competition to Jordan Westberg in drills. So, when he gets started, he ends up as the number 1 prospect in sports. So I don't want this to really sound like I'm wrecking him, but he is very much a shortstop. At shortstop defensively, he is an A+. The footwork, the pivoting, the gather especially, and the throws from the hole are A+. Outstanding. That's his position. When I read things about him being a natural third baseman or a guaranteed Gold Glove third baseman, I have, many minutes of drills on my phone where you can see that he is simply not, he's not that. He is a natural shortstop. His skill set has improved at third base and protecting that corner, but that pivot and that particular throw and stride all the way across the diamond, that's just not what he does well in baseball. And when you look at him, like 1 position over, he is elite. He is a major league shortstop, not an average one, a really good one. Maybe at the end of the year he'll have 7, 8 errors, but that's an everyday player. So at third base, I would think that number would be closer to 17 or 18. So, I'm the one that watches all the drills, and it's really kind of hard for me to criticize a player that I like. But he's just, when people read or write that he's a third baseman, they're not the ones that are sitting there watching the misguided throws and the less than perfect play.
And so this worries you for the season. You don't think this is just a byproduct of it being early and just getting your feet under you to start spring training. You think that this is something that you saw from him in games last year that concerned you, and then your concerns were reaffirmed getting into spring training this year?
Probably just, I wrote an article in 2020 that said I think the Orioles will return to contention when Kobe Mayo is the third baseman and Gunnar is the shortstop. So I've kind of always felt this way. I wouldn't categorize the way that I feel as worried at all. I'm very happy the Orioles have developed an outstanding major league shortstop who's ready to be an all-star and maybe the rookie of the year. But the talk about him being a third baseman, it's not incorrect, but I just don't see a real reason to do that when just 12 feet over he'd be one of the best in the league, one of the best in the sport.
Yeah, and it leads you to the other thing where the Orioles have 5, 6 infield prospects that can play shortstop, and that's before you think about Jorge Mateo. So in your estimation, would it be better for the Orioles to start the year with Gunnar Henderson at shortstop and Gold Glover Ramon Arias manning the hot corner?
That's definitely a yes, but as far as I don't even like to use the word problem. Like that's what you need to be a good organization. You need that competition where there's a top guy and everybody else is fighting for it. Think about 3.5 weeks ago, Darryl Hernandez was still in the picture.
Yeah.
That would mean there were 7. So, you have to start thinking about what the competition does to these athletes. Everybody's gunning for Gunnar at that number 1 spot. He's not losing that spot to Joey Ortiz. I can tell you, Joey Ortiz has not made one defensive error in practice yet this season. He's not overtaking Gunnar. So
yeah,
it's the kind of competition that makes systems better, and the Orioles are utilizing it to the absolute max. I really love to see it.
Yeah, they certainly have. And again, when we say it's a good problem to have, it's you have too many guys for too little spots. And Gunnar Henderson, we know that offensively, he's going to be that dude. Everything that we've seen shows he's going to be that dude. It's just a matter of, is that glove going to play where they have him, and are they going to be forced to move him over the shortstop? And I don't think you're going to be sorry at the end of the day wherever he plays, because I think he's that special of a talent, and you very clearly do as well. We're not going to make a mistake here. You love Gunnar Henderson, and we know that. It's just everybody has a weakness. Everybody has a weakness, and
absolutely
we got to do both sides of the line here with these prospects.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So now also you mentioned Joey Ortiz, and you said he hasn't made an error that you've seen in spring training to start. Could this guy factor in if they keep Gunnar at third base? How long could it be, and how much of a? Let me see if I can figure out how to phrase this. How early could we see him if Jorge Mateo's bat doesn't get off to a hot start?
It really depends what the organization prioritizes. I mean, I can tell you the way to think about it is it's a music video, and everybody is a backup dancer, and Joey Ortiz is the lead singer. Just the way that he moves, the way that he puts his body in position, reaches for the ball with his glove, digs into his glove. I mean, he is so flawlessly perfect. It's like Javi Baez. It's like some of the all-time greats. I want to see hard ground balls hit right at his feet, because he's never going to make a mistake. So, while that part of his game really, really does stand out, he's a good hitter, but in the cage and, looking at the stats and game performance, he hasn't brought that to the table as consistently as the defensive skills. So I wonder if the organization might skip over that guaranteed error-free glove for someone like Westberg, who just, has high WRC plus and can hit a lot of home runs per at bat or per game. And so it really depends. The answer, when we see who breaks camp with the club, or who gets that first promotion when a starter is slumping, that'll kind of be an indication. I always prefer defense, but it's the American League East. The Orioles' expectations are a little bit loftier, so I don't know. How much is it really worth protecting against that one run when you're really trying to capitalize on more rally situations for yourself? I'm not not the kind of baseball mind that can really calculate that very well.
No, I get it, man. It's a hard ask, and like
right.
we've said, they have a lot of prospects for not a lot of spots that are knocking on the door. And, not to mention, you mentioned Jordan Westburg, and I think we all agree that he's probably going to end up playing second base for the Baltimore Orioles just because of who you have coming up in the woodworks in the next couple of years and who's already there on the left side. So you really have to think who's going to be playing shortstop, and Westburg, is he going to be blocked by Adam Frazier and Ramon Arias? Again, it's a good problem to have, but you have a lot of talent, and you're not going to be happy to see any of these guys go or not get their chance. But it might be a good thing, because if they're not getting their chance, it's because somebody else is playing really well. So I know we only got a couple of minutes left here with you, Eric, and I do have some more players I want to ask you about. I feel like maybe your favorite prospect is Kobe Mayo. And it looks like from the videos that you've shared, it looks like he's just mashing as per usual. Kind of a down season for him last year. I know he had some injuries that he was dealing with. We assume he's probably going to start the year at AA Bowie. How long before he gets up to AAA? Do you think he could have an impact on the big league club this year, or is he still more likely a year away?
Yes to Bowie. Maybe at the earliest, maybe May 8th, May 15th is usually when they do the first wave. So if things are all going swimmingly, that could be the promotion date to AAA. And I don't think his batting practice exploits are going to stop being astounding when he gets to the major leagues. I think somehow he's improved his core. He's improved his middle. He had great exit velocities last year, and I think somehow they're even better as he physically matures. I stopped filming the videos of where the ball went and just started filming his swing so we can see the legs and midsection. This guy is a freak. I mean, he's like what Richie Sexton was for us. Like, you just knew with that long swing, if he makes connection, it is just going so far in the opposite direction so fast. So, I've always trusted his skill set, and now he's bringing a little more strength and athleticism to the equation. And that's before we talk about how truly of a good third baseman he is. I mean, I've been watching minor league players develop for a little while, and he just has the best corner protecting skill set to go with that tall 6'5" body that can get up and get liners. He is the perfect third baseman, and that's also part of the reason why I think Gunnar is a shortstop, because we have a better defensive option, in a different tier defensively right next to him in Kobe. So, there's a lot of exciting prospects, but you got it right. He is without question the one I'm the most excited about. I see a 30 home run season for him this year, but I really see a 30 home run for him every single year.
Yeah, he's got a ton of power, and I remember when they drafted him, seeing him play down in the Florida Complex League. The swing was just so fast and so pretty, and when he squares it up, that ball goes a country mile. And the arm grade is elite, 70, 80 grade arm on a scale of, what's the scale, 20 to 80? He's got an elite grade arm. A lot of people seem to think that he may have to move off of third base, go over to first base, or be in the outfield. I like the idea of the Orioles because they don't really have a great first base prospect in the minor league system, and if Ryan Mountcastle doesn't put it together, you'd like to have somebody that can push him. You would love to have that, but you also, I don't want to waste his arm over at first base. You really believe so much in his glove and his bat that this is a guy you think is going to be a cornerstone for them maybe as early as 2024.
Oh, I would not. I'm not of the mindset to waste that ability at third base. Regardless, you can shore up first base a number of ways. I bet he'd be adequate there or good, but you don't want to waste that skill set unless it's for someone that's one of the top level free agents, or I don't know, someone like a Manny Machado or Ohtani or someone like that. Then you might want to think about thwarting his development or putting it in another way just to keep his bat in the lineup. But if I'm talking at a meeting and we're talking about like average dudes moving Kobe over from third base, I'm always going to say no. I want those plays made by by him. I want that ground covered by him. I want that charging one-hander on a bunt that I've seen him execute so perfectly. You know, I want that to be him until he proves that he can't do it.
Yeah. No, and he should be given every opportunity. I know that he was a little bit hurt last year. The exit velocity was still there, but the average was down. I agree with you. I think he's going to have a big year at Bowie, and a lot of guys get to Bowie that struggled at Aberdeen. They get to Bowie and the bat improves because it's an easier park to hit in. It'll be interesting to see the numbers that he puts up at AA, and just to have another guy like that, where it wasn't that long ago that people were projecting he might be the best offensive prospect in baseball at some point. He, you know, if everything that you're saying is true about him and everything that I've seen about him is true, that is still a possibility for him. Number one thing, he's got to stay on the field. If he stays on the field, stays healthy, the production, I think, is going to be there. I think you and I are on the same page with him there. Now, Eric, how much time do you have left? Because I have two more players I want to ask you about.
Go ahead. It's no problem. We got time.
All right. The first guy, we're going to end on a pitcher, so we're going to go to Samuel Basallo. He looks like an absolute unit. The guy he looks just physically imposing. He's just 18 years old. It looks like a great catcher. Problem is Adley's a catcher, and if Samuel Basallo is maybe 3 years away, Adley's still going to be here. Can he play first base, and should we expect him to be an affiliated ball to start this season?
Okay, great questions, and I'm extremely happy you asked about him because I can say with confidence that I'm more educated and experienced with watching him than anyone else there is. So, will he be a catcher long term? I don't know. It's strange to see somebody that's so big continually squatting. You know, your life is squatting 10,000 times a year, 50,000 times. So he's very tall, and he's probably going to get even a little taller. So it's hard to see. I probably would place him as a true first base prospect playing catcher right now. I've also seen him in the FCL, play first base, not extensively, but as a low percentage mix. He's actually he's completely awesome. I've posted the video. He can scoop it. He can jump. He guards the bag. He's a great, that blocking balls in the dirt is a baseball skill that he has in spades. So he can play that, and he probably will play that. He's extremely young. He's the youngest guy in Major League camp, except for the players' toddlers. So he's really young. And even if he does fulfill that track, like you said, 3 years away, I don't think he's really making noise as far as like influencing the Major League roster, especially a player of like Adley's caliber. If he is, then the international draft of 2019 or 2018 was an absolute monster, just like Basallo is. So that would be like the best case scenario. But for a young player, a young minor league catcher, he's losing the baby fat, and he impacts the ball. He might have been, I'm going to say, like the second or third best player in the whole complex league last year, behind Junior Caminero of the Rays and Miguel Blyce on the Red Sox, and those guys are explosive prospects. So Basallo was really right with the best hitters in his league at 17 years old. Yeah,
that's impressive. And how tall is he? He looks like he's probably about 6'4", 6'5".
I'm going to say he's 6'3 3/4", if not 6'4". So when he finishes up, he could just be scratching 6'5", or maybe even taller. You go by the parents. His family has come to the FCL. By the way, he's got a little brother who's absolutely awesome, a righty shortstop. But his dad is like 6'4", 6'5". So Sam's going to be maybe even a little taller. It's so funny. The website MLB or MILB.com has his weight listed at 180. And, the day I met him, I could tell clearly that he was significantly heavier than that.
Yeah, he looks bigger. He's a tall guy, and he's a muscular guy. He looks just like I said, he looks like a freaking unit. I'm excited for him because if he ends up being a first base prospect, that's a guy who 3 years down the line could be an imposing figure in the middle of an Orioles lineup. So we will be sure to keep an eye on him. Is the expectation from you that he starts out at Delmarva this year?
Yeah, affirmative. Yep, he'll be there.
Yeah. All right. And then lastly, Cade Povich came over in the Jorge Lopez trade last year. I believe he's a 22-year-old left-handed starting pitcher. apparently he's been dazzling. What have you seen from Cade Povich? Is there reason to get excited about this kid?
Okay, he might be the pitcher that I've actually seen the most of in camp, and yes, absolutely. I was listening to your show from the beginning, and I'm really glad you asked about him for several reasons. His pitch mix is four-seam, curveball, and then a little like a battle between slider and changeup for the third one. Like what he's going to throw it, like 2-1 or 2-2.
Mm-hmm.
So, Matt, one of the reasons I'm glad you asked is because after Grayson and after DL Hall, I'm kind of just like a lot of Orioles prospect fans, like who's going to be the next guy that steps up. I used to think it was going to be Zach Peak before he got hurt, but now I think it's going to be Povich, and I really am a huge supporter of Noah Denoyer. They're throwing partners, but I like Povich because he's lefty and his spin is just more natural. He can really, really, really make it spin right off the fingers. His curveball is it's really kind of like Clayton Kershaw's. He'll put it right in the hitter's face and let them see him like yanking it down, and he'll let them know it's a curveball, but he really trusts that movement, and sometimes it's just so precise and so late that this is going to be a high strikeout per nine guy. And the ability to use four pitches, the fact that he's lefty, I look at the trade with Jorge Lopez. I know the minors. I saw Nunez and Rojas pitch when they were on the Twins. Like, I kind of think the Twins should have probably done the deal and not thrown in Povich at all, and it still would have been a fair deal. Like, it's hard for me to believe that an organization that kind of develops pitching really well and knows what they have, like really early on in development, like the Twins, would give this guy up at all. They must have thought the world of Jorge Lopez. So, it's kind of like in the margins type thing, but just getting Povich at all is a huge, huge victory. The fact that he's going to slot in and start striking people out on the farm is, a major, major trade deadline win for the Orioles. This guy is fully legit. Also has a really good pickoff move.
That's a good pickoff move from a lefty is a thing of beauty. When they have you think of Andy Pettitte. When the lefty has a good pickoff move, it's like I said, a thing of beauty. And if he's as good as you're saying, he was good enough certainly to get, I believe, in the top 50 on MLB Pipeline's top 100 prospects list. People must be seeing the same thing you're seeing, and he's probably going to start this year at Double-A Bowie. You're expecting this guy to maybe make a big league impact by 2024.
Oh, honestly, if he gets a little bit bigger, you kind of like you read about him or see his scouting reports and they say like 91 to 93. I think he's already up to 95. So, he gets a little bit bigger. He's a slender athlete, but a little bit bigger. Yeah, I think 2024 is totally reasonable. I also think that last year when he came over and adjusted to our system, he didn't perform like he's going to perform this year. He just looks like a really confident guy, into his routine, extremely focused, and when it's time for him to throw lives or go in a throwing session or do drills, he just looks like, he really doesn't look like a minor leaguer. He goes about his business like a big league guy.
Awesome. We're super excited. You're getting us amped up for all these prospects, amped up to watch some Orioles spring training. You're going to the game yourself right now, so we're going to let you head on out of here. Before you do, what do you got coming up on Florida Prospect Report?
Well, we're going to have a lot of episodes covering the minor leagues like we do. Fans are very appreciative that we give them the perspective to watch stuff, whatever's going on in Florida that they can't be here for. Like, you guys were talking about the weather. It's already like 84 degrees. I'm slathered in sunblock just to drive over. So, it's a little bit different in Florida. We really like to give that perspective. And we'll have a lot of shows, a lot of minor league games, a lot of camps and practices to cover. So thanks very much for asking.
Eric, thank you for constantly tuning in. Thanks for taking some time for us. We love talking with you. We'll talk to you again here down the line. Go enjoy the game today, all right? Baseball's back.
Same to you guys. Happy Saturday.
All right, man. See you later. That was Eric Garfield from Florida Prospect Report joining us on the Bat Around today. Just so much to be enthused about. And when you talk to Eric, you can't help but get excited about what the Orioles have coming through the pipeline. So just, again, special thanks to Eric for continuing to be a great guest on the show today. And every other time he comes on the program. We got to get another break. When we come back in, we're going to do Sounding Off with Zach Goodman, some Orioles banter. But before we do that, I know that we are promoting our PressBoxOnline.com offers, but we also want you to do things responsibly. Gambling, it can be fun, but you should set a limit and stay within it. And remember, if you or a loved one has a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER 24/7 or go to helpmygamblingproblem.org. That's helpmygamblingproblem.org for free confidential services. Catching a break. When we come back, Orioles banter and Sounding Off. That's next on the Bat Around.
The Baltimore County Police Department is hiring. Entry-level officers start at over $60,000 and over $64,000 for lateral officers, with $10,000 signing bonuses available. Plus, cadets start at over $32,000. Great benefits are available like medical, dental, and vision insurance, tuition reimbursement, 15 sick days per calendar year with no limit, career advancement to more than 20 specialized units, and more, with further incentives for military service members and veterans. A passion for service, a career for life with the Baltimore County Police Department. Find out more at joinbaltimorecountypd.com or call 410-887-5542. Must be a United States citizen, have a valid driver's license, and a high school diploma or GED equivalent.
Stan the Fan here, welcoming back one of my favorite sponsors, the Costas Inn. And everybody around Baltimore knows that the Costas Inn is a great place to go and grab crabs, steaks, salads, soups, whatever's on your mind to eat in person. But did you know that the Costas Inn has upped their game? They are now one of the premier takeout places in Baltimore. Give them a call now to order your food, 410-477-1975. That's the Costas Inn over 4100 North Point Boulevard.
Are you a diehard O's fan looking for the perfect way to show your team spirit? Look no further than Birdland Sports. Birdland Sports is a small business run by fans for fans. They offer a wide variety of unofficial O's merchandise, from the Birds Are Coming tees to player cartoon shirts and more. And the best part? Their prices are more affordable than the big guys. So head to birdlandsports.com and grab your gear today. Show your support for the Birds with Birdland Sports.
Make the most out of every day in your Toyota RAV4. Available in hybrid or gas-only models. A RAV4 can get you where you want to go in style. Check out buyatoyota.com for deals on new RAV4s from your local Toyota dealer today.
I'm Griffin Bass, and I have the extraordinary, mind-blowing, and life-affirming pleasure of being the new producer for the absolute funniest, smartest, and most handsome sports host in all of Baltimore. Wait a second, Glenn, I'm working for you, not Jeremy Kahn. If you're not listening to Glenn Clark Radio, here's what you're missing.
He's Coach Kevin Willard.
Glenn, thanks for having me.
Baltimore Ravens wide receiver, Rashad Bateman.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
He is outfielder Cedric Mullins.
Thank you guys for having me.
Mr. Marcus Williams, who's now with us.
Man, appreciate it. Happy to be on.
Ravens kicker Justin Tucker.
Thanks for having me.
Adley Rutschman.
Absolutely, thanks for having me on.
John Angelos.
Thanks a lot. Good to be with you.
Ryan Mountcastle.
Thanks for having me on, guys.
Marlon Humphrey.
Thank you.
Talia Tungavailoa.
Thank you guys for having me.
He is J.K. Dobbins.
Thank you for having me. I had a great time.
The great Ray Lewis.
Always good to be on.
He is Mr. Cal Ripken Jr.
Good chatting with you.
Watch Glenn Clark Radio at youtube.com/PressBoxOnline and listen live at PressBoxOnline.com/radio or anytime on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, or anywhere you get your podcasts.
Welcome back to the Bat Around. Great show today. And Zach reminded me during the break that we already did Sounding Off. In my notes, I had Sounding Off after Eric's segment. So I just was trying. I'm like, how are we going to squeeze all this in? And now we don't have to because we already did Sounding Off.
Sure did.
So it is time now for Orioles banter. And Orioles banter today, we are going to talk about somebody posted on Twitter the other day. Hang on one second.
I'll fill it in for you. Someone posted, because I did see this tweet, players who were Orioles that were stars elsewhere before they came to the Orioles, and they either finished their career with the Orioles or something along those lines. And people were trying to brainstorm. I know you got in on that conversation. A few other pretty prominent Orioles fans got in on that conversation. So you wanted to talk about that today in Orioles Banter. I'm going to tell you right now, Paul, that my list and the WAR number that is going to total here, and I know you're going to explain that in a second, is probably not going to be as good as yours, but we'll see. I threw some names in there that probably don't necessarily qualify as stars, and probably, but also you wouldn't think of them necessarily as Orioles. So I threw that in there. We'll see how this goes. I'm confident that you have a little bit of a better list, but we'll see. We'll go down the line.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
I have a good list. I have a good team.
I would think. Yeah.
I have some guys on my team that I didn't see a single person post.
Okay.
Post about.
And I won't have them either.
Some of them were really hard. Like second base was
really hard.
Difficult. Third base was difficult. At least in my opinion, it was difficult. Shortstop was difficult, but I think I picked a good one. And I actually picked another shortstop as a utility guy on my list. So let's see here.
Start off at catcher and get going.
Yeah.
Sure.
Hang on one second. I'm trying to figure out something real quick.
Okay. Yeah, I did think that the infield was probably the hardest part. I think all three of my guys are somewhat questionable, but they did have good careers and finished them out in Baltimore, or not even finished them out, but they're still playing in two of the cases. So we'll get it going. But again, I think the early 2000s are where I'm really going to miss some guys. I think.
Well, there weren't a lot of guys that were here. The one big guy that I would expect you to have is Sammy Sosa.
I have Sammy Sosa.
That would be the one big guy. And Vladimir Guerrero.
Yep.
When he was here in 2011. Yep. I actually have a canvas of Camden Yards where the playing field is in color, but everything else is in black and white.
That's really cool.
And the guy that's batting is Vladimir Guerrero.
Oh, nice.
It's you can see his name.
That's cool.
Up on the thing. So I was like, oh, that's from 2011.
Yep.
So that's pretty cool. So let's get right into this. We're going to start out. Actually, let's start out with our lineup because I still have to figure out my bullpen. I had to make an adjustment here because I had Sid Fernandez in my bullpen.
Never would have made mine.
And he was never a reliever. He was a starter for the Orioles. And
I have
a starter in his entire career.
I have two guys in my bullpen that were starters.
Well, we'll let you do that because it's.
I can't think of anyone else.
It was probably more difficult for you.
It was.
All right. So starting at catcher, I have Javi Lopez.
Same. I do have Javi Lopez.
Okay. 29.7 WAR in a 15-year career. At first base, you go ahead.
So I put Jim Thome. And he didn't really play a lot of first base for the Orioles, but first baseman long-term in his career. So I went with Jim Thome.
I went Palmeiro.
Okay.
Because Palmeiro, if you remember, I couldn't have used him if he only played here from 94 through 98.
Mm-hmm.
But Palmeiro was also here in 04-05 when he was clearly in the twilight of his career.
Yeah.
So I have Jim Thome, 73.1 WAR in 22 seasons. Rafael Palmeiro, 21.9 WAR in 20 seasons. More valuable player than Jim Thome.
Yeah, I numbers 3.32 for Jim Thome that I calculated up here. So
I just kind of did the average WAR. I guess I should have done that differently. I did the average WAR per player, so I took their WAR for their career.
Right.
I added all the WARs for the lineup, the rotation, and the bullpen. I added all the WARs, and then added up all the years that they played, and then divided the whole number by the whole number.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
That's what I did too.
So I got a 2.78. I'm talking about in one calculation. So I got a 2.78 combined WAR for each player.
Okay.
But I probably should have done it differently. We
don't have to worry about the WAR.
Yeah.
We'll just go down the list.
By the way, when you talk about a replacement player, are you assuming that a replacement player makes your team go 81 and 81? If you have a team full of replacement players, or is that the assumption?
It's a good question. I don't know. I'm not sure how exactly that works. WAR is a mystery calculation. I'll tell you that. And obviously, Baseball Reference does it differently than Fangraphs, and there's other outlets who do it too, and it's all kind of a mystery. So
okay, well, and
but honestly, it does represent player value.
It would be the same. Now I'm thinking about it. The calculation, whether I did each individual player, just add them up. It's the same thing. It's going to come out to the same number. So let's do this real quick.
Well, 3.32 for Jim Thome. It was divided by his years. WAR divided by years was 3.32.
Right.
Yeah.
So at second base, I had Delino DeShields.
Okay.
24.4 WAR in 13 seasons.
I had Rougned Odor. I went with Odor, given that had a lot of good seasons in Texas. I believe an All-Star year in 17, where he hit like 40 or 35 home runs, something along those lines.
Sure.
So I went with Odor, and that was 0.71 over his career WAR-wise per season.
for Delino over the course of his career. He was a 1.88.
Yeah, got me there about one. Yeah.
Miguel Tejada is my shortstop.
Okay.
40, because if you remember, he came back in 2010 and played third base for the Orioles. He was a 47.1 WAR player, almost 3 WAR per year in his 16 seasons.
Yeah, I didn't even remember that, if I'm being honest with you. I went with Jose Iglesias, actually.
Okay.
Who was 1.06 per year in his career, and I believe he's still playing, so we might see Iglesias again sometime soon.
There you go. At third base, I want to hear who you picked for third base.
I took Wilson Betterment, actually, I thought this was one of the hardest positions, but Wilson Betterment actually had a pretty good career before he got to Baltimore, and then had a really good, I think it was 2011 or 2011, I believe, or 2012, one of the two. But Wilson Betterment, not a star, and again, I told you a few of these would be questionable, but I couldn't come up with anyone at third base that I thought would be a better option than Wilson Betterment.
Wilson Betterment, when he came to the Orioles, his best year is probably 2006 when he hit 263 with 18 homers and 53 RBIs and 23 doubles. He had a good year in 2012. He was 261 with a 322 on base percentage, 12 homers, 19 doubles, 40 RBI. 31 walks compared to 103 strikeouts. But then he got hurt in spring training. If you remember, he hyperextended his knee in 2013, and he
vaguely, yeah.
Yeah, and when he came back, he only played in 6 games, 10 at bats, no hits. I went Garrett Atkins, and I'll tell you,
interesting. Okay,
Garrett Atkins is maybe my least favorite player of all time.
By the way, .25 was the number for Betterment.
His overall WAR?
That was per year.
Oh, per year?
Yeah. Mine are all per year.
Garrett Atkins, 4.0 WAR in 8 seasons, so he's a .5 WAR per year.
Yep.
With the Orioles, he was god-awful. He slashed 214, 276, 286, 562 with 1 home run and 9 ribeye stakes. But from 2005 to 2008, his average season was 301, 364, 482, 846, 22 homers, 105 RBIs, 36 doubles, 58 walks, and just 86 strikeouts per year. He had some really remarkable seasons in there where 2006, 329 with a 409 on base percentage, 29 homers, 120 RBIs. 2007, 301, 367, 25, and 111. 2008, 286, 328, 21, and 99. He was a really good player for a nice 4-year stretch, and then came to the Orioles, and he was just the worst. And he had a bad attitude, too. He was just absolutely the worst.
I vaguely remember him, but never would have made my list. Didn't think of him.
I hate Garrett Atkins, but he was a good player before he got here, but I freaking hate him. All right, Tim Raines Sr. is my left fielder, 69.4 WAR over 23 seasons.
Got to make the outfield, definitely.
Yeah. All right, Sammy Sosa is my center fielder. And maybe you put him in right field.
I just put outfield, just 3 outfielders.
Sammy Sosa, he did play over 200, I think like over 260 games in center field in his career. A lot more when he was a lot younger. But surprisingly, 58.6 WAR in 18 seasons. I thought it would be higher than that.
I thought it would be too.
He had 3 60-homer plus seasons.
Just didn't provide a lot of defensive value, so I think that's what really hurt him. I mean, he probably would have been up at 70, 75 if he had been a better defender.
Yeah. So that's Sammy Sosa. Obviously, he made both of our lists. My right fielder is Vladimir Guerrero
Has to be.
Sr. I was also surprised because he was good offensively and defensively, but his defense started to wane as he got older and a little bit more immobile. But a 59.5 WAR in 16 seasons.
When you think of guys like this, former stars that became Orioles, he's the one you think of. First, when you asked me that question, the first guy I thought of was Vlad Guerrero. I think he is the key guy that you have to have on this list, but also Sammy Sosa is a pretty big one. And Tim Raines as well, pretty big one.
Yeah. You're talking about you have quite a few Hall of Famers and quite a few other guys who would have been Hall of Famers if not for steroids. And then finally, my designated hitter is Jim Thome.
Okay.
73.1 WAR in 22 seasons. I'm assuming you did a bench. We were talking about 26-man roster.
I had a DH as well, though. I had Albert Bell as my DH.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
That's a good one. See, and the thing is, Albert Bell was still in his prime when he got here. He hit,
I guess.
37. He hit 60 home runs in 2 years, and he missed the last chunk of the season in his last year here. He got that hip displacement and couldn't play anymore. And so with Albert Bell, he was still in his prime. He honestly didn't register to me because he was here so short of a time. But he was an imposing player before he got here and while he was here. But technically, you're right, because I have somebody in my bullpen who kind of fits that bill also. For my bench, I have Will Clark as my backup first baseman in DH, a 56.5 WAR over 15 seasons. Will Clark was a phenomenal hitter.
He was.
And if he had shown a little bit more, he had good power, but if he had been more powerful, I mean, this is a guy who hit well over 300 for his career. I mean, you're looking at nearly a 4 wins per year player over his career. That's his career average.
No, Will Clark is great. Honestly, he's not on my list. I didn't remember that Will Clark was an Oriole at one point. Sorry. But I had as my first guy Eric Davis, and this one's a little bit questionable because he did have really good years.
Well, Eric Davis is on my list too, but we're talking about. I'm going backup. I'm assuming you have a backup first baseman.
Well, I guess Albert Bell would be my backup first baseman, given that
Albert Bell was an outfielder.
Was he really?
Yeah.
Okay, not my time. I had Derek Lee. Derek Lee's on my list. That works as backup first baseman.
So Derek Lee. Next, we're going to what was Derek Lee's WAR?
2.31 per season.
2.31 per season.
Yeah.
Did you average the whole team's WAR?
I have another first baseman on here as well. I just added it all together in just one number. At the end of this.
Okay. So then. You mean per season? You added
right. I added every guy per season's numbers, and it came out to just a WAR number combined. Of all of these guys. Yeah.
So for my utility infielder, I took Mike Bordick.
Okay.
26.8 WAR in 14 seasons. Really good defensively. Had some decent offensive seasons here. And the reason I was able to take him is because he got traded from the Orioles in 2000 at that fire sale at the deadline.
Mm-hmm.
Got traded from the Orioles in 2000 to the Mets and then re-signed with the Orioles for 01 and 02. So technically he left and then came back, and he only played one more season after that, and that was with the Blue Jays in 2003. And so for Mike Bordick, the last 2 years that he were here were the 2 of his final 3 seasons, he was past his prime at that point.
Yeah.
So I don't technically consider that cheating because he did leave and then came back. Mike Bordick, 26.8 in 14 seasons.
Yeah, I did this a little differently. Sorry, it's the way it is. I actually put 3 first basemen on my bench because they were great hitters, and that's why I put them there.
You can't do that.
I know you can't do that.
You can't do that because you have to have
You never said I couldn't do it, so I did it.
It should be implied because it's a realistic
26-man
roster.
Sure, that's fair. But this is what I got.
Let's have Palmeiro play third, Tommy play third base, and Albert Bell play second.
I had to come up with this in about 35 minutes, so I didn't have a lot of time to really think about it. So I just threw down the guys that I thought were good hitters. So my next one was Glenn Davis, who came in at 1.97 WAR per season.
That's a good one.
So I mean, again, not maybe the position you wanted, but that's what I got. So that's what I came up with.
I guess Albert Bell would be my backup first baseman. Never played first base.
You know what? I thought he did. I really did. I don't know. I mean, but again, not my time. Not my time.
He was a left.
Well before I watched baseball. Well before.
So yeah, it may have been. It was before you were born that he was here.
What year was he here?
98, 99.
So yeah, before I was born.
It was before you were born, but so was Glenn Davis.
Glenn Davis also was. But I thought of Glenn Davis only because everyone talks about it as the worst trade in Orioles history. So it's pretty easy. It's pretty easy to remember Glenn Davis.
They lost Steve Finley. I'm sorry, Chuck Finley. Steve Finley. Chuck Finley was a pitcher. They lost Steve Finley. They lost Pete Harnisch, and they lost.
That's rough.
Kurt Schilling.
Rough. Yeah. Kurt Schilling was here.
And that Glenn Davis trade. Kurt Schilling alone is like, oh my God, what the hell happened?
Kurt Schilling was here from like 88 to 90, somewhere around those times, right? Am I right in saying that?
He got traded
later?
He got traded in, it was either 89 or 90.
Okay.
He got traded for Glenn freaking Davis.
Right.
So my average from my lineup, the wins above replacement for my lineup, 36.14.
Okay. Yeah, you're going to be a lot higher than I was. So,
what was your number?
Let me go back and see, actually. So
did you add up their career wars? My career wars were 580.
Okay, so let me explain what I did. I went back and I took all their career war and divided it by all the seasons they played. So, for example, Sammy Sosa, 60 WAR divided by whatever, 17 seasons he played.
2.78.
Right, so 20.66 would be the number for my lineup. For the bench, it was 8.75. So if you combine those together, if that's what you're doing, you're around 30.
Yeah, so mine, you were at 28 point something or other.
Yeah.
My average WAR per player for my lineup is 2.78, 36.14 for a single season if you do their averages. So I got you there by about 7.5 to 8 wins. Let's move over to the starting rotation. My number 1 is Rick Sutcliffe.
Mine is 2.
33.9 WAR in 18 seasons. My number 2 is Jimmy Key. 48.9 WAR in 15 seasons.
Okay. Yeah, I have Jimmy Key as my number 5. I just put him in there at the bottom because he was the last one I thought of. So he's in there.
All right. My number 3 is Fernando Valenzuela.
Also my 3.
41.5 in 17 seasons.
Okay.
My number 4, I think you probably don't have this guy unless you remembered him from a trivia question.
I think I do.
Doug Drabeck.
No.
29.2 in 13 seasons.
Okay.
He had about an 8-year stretch where he was one of the best pitchers in baseball.
I have Johan Santana as my
He never
number
played
4.
a regular season game with the Orioles. I don't
He's
count
still
that.
on the Orioles.
He was.
There's another guy then who hasn't.
He was
played.
on their team in spring training. I mean, you could have used Felix Hernandez, and we're talking
Felix
about
Hernandez is in the bullpen. So yeah,
you cheated every step.
You didn't give me parameters. So I went and did what I did.
You can't put 3 first basemen on your bench, and you can't put a starting.
I wasn't given parameters.
You should know the parameters. You have to look at it as an actual 26-man roster. What 26-man roster has 3 DH first base types?
I put the best
And,
hitters on the bench.
You have to go by position. You can't just say, okay, well, I like Frank Robinson. I have to put him at shortstop because I don't have a shortstop. You can't do that. Just like you can't have a starting pitcher who only started. That's why I had to take Sid Fernandez out of my bullpen. You can't have a starting pitcher who only started his career and put him in your bullpen.
Again, 35 minutes to do this. I did the best I could.
Yeah.
So
I put this list together in about 15 minutes.
If
that.
Okay. Fair. Fine. Sure.
Anyway, so you had Johan Santana.
Yes.
We're going to number 5. Who was your number 2?
My number 2, actually, again, I just put them in a random order, but Ubaldo made my list. Just because of the years he had in Colorado, threw that no-hitter, and he was pretty good by the time he came here, and then crashed and burned.
Okay. My number 5, and a lot of people forget that this guy pitched for the Orioles, is Juan Guzman, the Toronto Blue Jays ace, 24.3 WAR in 10 seasons. The average WAR for my team actually comes out to what Juan's average was, 2.43 WAR.
Okay.
Over the course of for the 5 starting pitchers.
Okay, so I had 13.59. So if we divide that by 5, I'm not sure what you get there, but 13.59 divided by 5 is 2.71.
2.71, which is your rotation is higher, even though you cheated with Johan Santana.
Yeah, 4.31 with Johan Santana. See, Johan Santana is a guy that...
You said 4.31?
4.31 per season.
Was your average WAR?
Was the average WAR for Johan Santana, yeah.
You're okay.
But 2.71 was the, once you add them all up and combine them, and then divide them by 5.
So what is your total WAR to this point?
Total, I'd have to add these up here. I also had a 5th bench man, by the way. My backup catcher. 43, by the way, is so far. I had James McCann on my bench just because he was an all-star in 2019 and a catcher that was sort of a star at some point, and now is relegated to the backup role with Adley Rutschman.
Okay. I guess that you can do that because he is on the Orioles and he's been on the Orioles for a couple of months now. You can do that. Hang on one second. Okay. 103. Sorry, I'm just adding up some stuff here. Why don't you start with your first bullpen arm while I do this?
I think Lee Smith has to make the bullpen. There's no way Lee Smith doesn't. 1.61 per season for Lee Smith, Hall of Famer, a guy that only had about...
I don't think he's in the Hall of Fame. He's not in the Hall of Fame.
You sure?
I'm positive.
I'm going to look it up
Smith,
because I swear...
There's only a few... We actually talked about this on the show a few months ago.
Lee Smith is in the Hall of Fame.
Is he really?
Yeah. Lee Smith is in the Hall of Fame.
Wow, I didn't think he was in.
I think he got in maybe by the Veterans Committee. I believe that could have been how it was done, and he wasn't actually voted in. But I think he deserves to be there. I mean, closers obviously you get a lot less innings, so it's harder to really build your resume like other guys. But it's fair. He should be in there.
Yeah, Lee Smith is he's on my list too.
Yep.
Yeah,
definitely.
He's on
definitely
my list. All right. So I'm gonna go from top to bottom here.
Okay.
With the exception of Lee Smith. Norm Charlton, 8.1 WAR in 13 seasons.
Okay. I had Michael Givens the second time around. It counts because he's back. And 1.09 per season thus far from Michael Givens.
All right. Jamie Walker.
Okay. I had Andrew Miller, and this one's a little bit of a question mark because he did have some really, really good years before Baltimore, but he's also had good ones after. So
he came here in his prime. He was still in his prime,
That's fair.
And then he signed a huge deal. So I don't know that we can really compare our list because you didn't exactly do this correctly. Zach, I know you only had 35 minutes to do this. I did this in a significantly shorter time than you did. I'm not trying to be an ass about this.
I did the best I could.
You really did.
Listen,
you are a smart guy. You could
listen.
figure out that the 26-man roster can't have 4 first base DH types.
Again, I put the best hitters on the bench.
But that's not what that.
Then you can read off the rest of your list, and I'll sit over here and listen.
You see, you can sit over there in the corner.
Yeah, come on,
for putting starting pitchers in your rotation, guys who never pitched in the regular season for the in your bullpen, guys who never pitched in the regular season for the Orioles in your rotation, and 4 first base / DH types on your 13 to 14 man position player roster. Come on, man, you're better than that. You know better than that.
I was told to assemble 20.
A 26-man roster.
I'm going to let you keep going before I say anything else. I'm going to let you keep going.
You were told to assemble a 26-man roster. One day you hope to be a GM, right? If you're a GM,
okay.
Can you realistically put together a 26-man roster of guys who are elite starting pitchers, but you're going to put them in your bullpen, 1. And 2, a bunch of guys who don't have a position to play.
I get your point. You can go ahead and finish out your list.
No, I'm done.
Okay. I get your point. Just I'll hear the rest of your list. I get your point.
I'm interested to hear the rest of your list.
Okay.
You can still. Give
there's some guys on here. it's all
right.
You may not agree with them.
My next reliever is Jamie Walker.
Okay.
He was really good for Detroit. Not good for the Orioles. He had 1 decent season for the Orioles, but not good for the Orioles. 4 WAR in 10 years.
Tommy Hunter, the second time he came back in 2016, made my list.
Okay, that's a good one.
0.76 per year. By the way.
Steve Klein. He was really good before he got to the Orioles and not good here. 9.9 WAR in 11 seasons.
A starter number 1 in my bullpen, Kevin Millwood, made my list. So I again couldn't put him in the rotation, but he deserves to be on here because he is a pitcher who had great years in other places, and maybe he deserves it over Ubaldo. I could kick Ubaldo out of the rotation, and you know what? We're gonna put Ubaldo in the bullpen because he did pitch in 2015, 2016 a little bit out of the bullpen. So
his most famous relief appearance.
There was
the one that nobody
there were
will
some
ever
good ones.
Forget.
Yeah, there was
Zach Britton sitting in your bullpen. in the
there
playoffs.
you go.
So Ubaldo could be in your bullpen.
Okay, so we're in agreement.
Ubaldo could be in your bullpen.
There we go.
All right. Mike Gonzalez was next for me.
Okay.
7.7. He's the guy who came in. They brought him in to be their closer in 2010, and he was hurt and didn't tell anybody he was hurt. And he blew 3 saves in a row in Tampa Bay, and then blew a save that cost him the game on opening day at the home opener. He was hurt, went on the DL for a while. When he came back, he pitched significantly better, but he was beyond his prime. He was a really good relief pitcher prior to that. 7.7 WAR in 11 seasons.
Okay. So I had, again, this one's questionable because he only had a few decent years before he got to Baltimore. But I put Matt Albers on the list because he's just another guy I thought of that never really would think.
Albers began his career in Baltimore.
He did? I don't believe that. I don't believe so.
I'm almost certain.
Matt Albers played in the league for I believe 4 years. And I think I checked.
Oh, no, you know what? He played for Houston and he wasn't any good. He got better after he left the Orioles.
Okay, fair.
He got
fair.
You
got me there.
When he played for Boston. He was his best after the Orioles.
Matt Albers went on this list because he's, again, another guy that's pretty significant that you would never think of as an Oriole, which I kind of feel is the same thing with Eric Davis, where Eric Davis had, as well, you would think of him as a Cincinnati Red first and foremost, but he had, those couple great years for the Orioles.
All right. Did I say Eric Davis and did I say Charles Johnson as my catcher? I think I did, right?
I don't know. I think you did. I don't think you mentioned Charles Davis.
Charles Johnson was my backup catcher.
Okay, got it.
22.6 WAR in 12 seasons. All right. Mike Timlin, 19 WAR in 18 seasons.
Okay. My final one, as you already know, Felix Hernandez. But, he probably would have relieved a good amount for the Orioles if he had made the team that year.
No, he would have been a starter.
You think so?
He would have been a starter only.
So, again, but he was an Oriole at one time, pitched in spring training, didn't make it out. But that's the list. That's the list. And 52.28 was my total final number.
Yeah, but you cheated quite
Correct.
a bit. You cheated quite a bit.
Apparently, yeah. Apparently.
I had Randy Myers, who was still in his prime when he got here, but he pitched 2 years in Baltimore, 97 and 98, and then he never pitched again. No, I'm sorry. It was 96 and 90. No, it was 97 and 98, and then he wasn't a no. scratch that. 96, 97. He had 45 saves and 46 chances for the Orioles in 1997. He was an all-star, 1.81 ERA. It was probably his second best season because he had 53 saves in the season a few years prior to that. But 1998 was his last year. And he pitched, I think, for the Padres that year, and he just wasn't very good. No, I think it was the Cardinals, and he just wasn't very good. And he had a really nice career before he got to Baltimore and then only pitched 2 years here. So Randy Myers, 15.3 WAR in 14 seasons. He's on my list. And then finally, and he's not my closer. He's just the guy I had to replace Sid Fernandez with because I was following the rules. Chad Bradford, 10.1 WAR in 12 seasons.
Okay.
Really good pitcher for the for the Athletics. Came to the Orioles and had a couple of good seasons, but fizzled out pretty soon thereafter. So my overall WAR is only 39.53 because I followed the rules.
And that's added up after you divided each guy per season and then added them. Okay.
My entire 26-man roster is worth nearly 40 wins better than your average team. Let's figure out real quick, if you had a team full of replacement level players, what would their record be?
I mean, I guess it would be 81 and 81, I would think. Oh. 52.
52 wins is replacement level. 52 wins. So my team would have been worth just about 92 wins.
Okay.
Your team would have been worth 178 wins in a 162-game season because you have 4 first base DH types on your active roster and starting pitchers all thrown out your bullpen.
If you take those out, though, like if you take the first baseman out and the 2 starting pitchers, I would still have around 40, I believe.
I think you'd probably have a little less.
Maybe, yeah. I mean, so Felix Hernandez was a significant one because he had, what did he have? He had 3.31. And then if you want to take out Kevin Millwood, too. You want to take out Kevin Millwood? Or do you want to swap him with Ubaldo? And then we'll just keep that and call that fair.
Yeah, you can swap him with Ubaldo.
So if you take out Aubrey Huff, and if you take out Derek Lee, keep Derek Lee.
You never mentioned Aubrey Huff.
I didn't. Well, he was also on my bench. He was 3 first basemen. There were 3 first basemen. That was the other one. So Glenn Davis, Derek Lee, Aubrey Huff. If you want to keep one of them, the highest one was Derek Lee. We can take out Huff and Davis, so 1.58 and 1.79. And then everything else should be fair game, correct?
Sure.
Okay.
Aubrey Huff also, maybe his best year ever was in Baltimore in 2008, I believe it was. And then he had some really good years out in San Francisco. I think he was here and left here in the middle of his prime.
It could have been definitely in his prime here, probably. I would agree with that. But he had a few really good years before. And again, that's why I put him on the list.
All right. I had hoped that you would have done this a little differently.
I'm aware.
But I did not. Yeah, I think the world is aware. I think people over in China are aware.
Things aren't always going to be perfect. Let's just say that. Things aren't always going to go as smoothly as possible.
Hey, you know what? If the Orioles want to take Jose Abreu, get him on the team and play him at second base, by all means. We can deal with the 75 errors he'll make there at second base and let him just mash 25 home runs for the Orioles. We can do that. All right, so that's going to be it as far as our Orioles banter, this whole lineup thing, which Zach did incorrectly. That's going to do that for that. We're going to catch a final break when we come back. Final thoughts, because I was supposed to have a trivia question for you, and I forgot. And
I got one for you.
Oh, you got one for me?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, we'll do that then. When we come back, Jackson, give me a trivia question. I want to remind you today's show brought to you by the latest edition of Press Box, which is available now. On the cover, Luke Jackson profiles Orioles phenom Gunnar Henderson, breaking down how he was able to become the top prospect in baseball at such a young age and what could be next in his first full MLB season. Also inside, we meet lacrosse players from the men's and women's college programs across the state. And Bo Smolka breaks down another year of wide receiver issues for the Ravens. Press Box is available for free at over 500 area locations, including 60 Royal Farm stores, and you can always find the entire edition as well as the best daily coverage of the Orioles, Ravens, and Terps at PressBoxOnline.com. We're going to take a break so Zach can suffer his punishment of sitting in the corner for doing the list wrong. When we come back, we'll close things out with trivia and maybe a final thought or two. We'll see. That next on the Bat Around.
Baseball season is finally here, and what better way to celebrate than with some fresh gear from Birdland Sports? As a small business run by O's fans, Birdland Sports offers a great selection of unofficial merchandise, including unique designs like Birds Are Coming tees, player cartoon shirts, and championship prediction designs. And the best part, their prices are more affordable than the big guys. Get high-quality gear without breaking the bank. So whether you're heading to the ballpark or watching from home, show your love for the birds with Birdland Sports. Visit birdlandsports.com today to browse their collection and gear up for the season. Let's go O's!
Whether your focus is luxury and comfort, convenience and technologically advanced connectivity, or sporty performance and aggressive styling, we've got the perfect Highlander for you. Check out buyatoyota.com for deals on new Highlanders from your local Toyota dealer today.
That first sip. That first bite. Start your day off right with a delicious breakfast at Royal Farms. Choose from a fantastic selection of fresh Royal Farms breakfast sandwiches and top it off with a rich hot cup of the freshest coffee in the world. At Royal Farms, breakfast is available day and night. It's the freshest breakfast in the world. Real fresh, real fast. Royal Farms.
The latest edition of Press Box is available now. On the cover, Luke Jackson profiles Orioles phenom Gunnar Henderson, breaking down how he was able to become the top prospect in baseball at such a young age and what could be next in his first full MLB season. Also inside, we meet lacrosse players from the men's and women's college programs across the state, and Bo Smoka breaks down another year of wide receiver issues for the Ravens. Press Box is available for free at over 500 area locations, including 60 Royal Farm stores, and you can always find the entire edition, as well as the best daily coverage of the Orioles, Ravens, and Terps at PressBoxOnline.com.
Gambling can be a fun and entertaining experience, but there are risks involved. If you're planning on betting on the game at the casino or on your phone or computer, know your limit, stay within it. Set a budget and a time to stop. Remember, gambling isn't a financial solution, and it doesn't mix well with alcohol or drugs. Know the risks and have a plan before you begin gambling. For free and confidential services, call 1-800-GAMBLER 24/7 or go to helpmygamblingproblem.org.
There's something for everyone this February at Laurel Park. Come watch live horse racing every Friday through Sunday and join us on Saturday, February 18th for the Winter Stakes Spectacular, featuring 6 stakes races and $900,000 in purses, including the General George and Barbara Fritchie Stakes. The fun doesn't stop there. Stick around for our Winter Mardi Gras celebration with live music, delicious food and drinks, and a carnival atmosphere. Plus, don't miss out on President's Day holiday racing on Monday, February 20th. Visit laurelpark.com for more info. That's laurelpark.com for more. See you at the track.
All right, welcome back to the Bat Around. Zach and I arguing still through the entire break about the makeup of his list. I do admit that I was a little hard on him because I didn't give him the parameters. I assumed that being a baseball guy who wants to work in the front office, he would have put together a representative 26-man roster. I didn't tell him he couldn't use 4 first baseman DH types in his for his position players and bench. But moving forward, the understanding is it's got to be a legitimate 26-man representative roster. But a lot of it was just hammering it home for effect and entertainment. I'm not even mad at you at all.
I mean, I would hope not. I'm
not even mad at you, but Zach you were pretty worked up there, pretty upset with how I treated you on the air.
I needed to respond effectively. I think I responded effectively.
You scolded me. I was scolded.
Okay.
After I scolded you on the air. At least you scolded me off the air.
Yeah.
Respect your elders.
Oh.
Kevin Millwood, he did pitch in relief.
There you go.
He did pitch in relief. He had 1 relief appearance in 2002.
As did Felix Hernandez, by the way.
In 2000. And he had 2 in 1998, and he had 4 in his first season in 1997. So he did pitch in relief 8 times in his big league career. So he could have stayed in your bullpen technically. Now, I was going to try and come up with some kind of rookie starting pitchers who were phenomenal in their first year with the Orioles, like we expect Grayson Rodriguez to be.
Trivia, you mean?
Yeah, I was going to try to come up with a trivia question for you for that. That would have taken a lot longer than I gave myself time for.
And I would have done poorly.
Yeah, and
most likely
it would have been really difficult because I know Mike Mussina and maybe Rodrigo Lopez. And that's about it. So that would have been an unfair question, and it would have taken way.
Was Chris Tillman good his rookie year? I believe he was okay.
Well, it depends on what constitutes as his rookie year.
True.
If his rookie year was 2012, then yes, he was phenomenal. He had a sub-3 ERA in 21. I think in like 16 starts or 21 starts or something like that. But he had pitched for the Orioles as well in 2010 and 2011, and got knocked around each time. So he wasn't good until his first. I think that he was a rookie. He exceeded rookie limitations in 2000.
Got it. Okay.
12. So, anyway, you somehow have a trivia question for me.
Yeah, this was actually supposed to be for Glenn yesterday, and then we just never got to it. So This is going to be for you, and this was going to be probably a little harder for Glenn than for you. I think you just have some of these random facts in your head that work out well for you in trivia.
Chris Tillman exceeded rookie limitations in his first year in 2009 when he made 12 starts.
Okay, yeah. All right, so there's going to be really, I think, 2 difficult ones on here. And the rest you should get pretty.
And this is baseball?
This is an Orioles question, and there's 2 difficult ones in here. We'll see if you get them. I think you'll do really well.
Okay.
So name every starting infielder on every World Series championship Orioles team.
Jesus. I don't think I can do that.
I think you can.
There's
really only two difficult ones.
All right. So we'll go backwards.
Okay.
1983 was Eddie Murray at first base.
Correct.
Is it Rich Dower?
Rich Dower.
Rich Dower.
Yeah, Rich Dower
at second base.
Yep.
Cal was at shortstop.
Yep. Third is the toughest one on this entire list.
Third base.
He played 81 games, but he was the majority third baseman for the 83 Orioles.
Oh, man. Third base, 1983.
I'll be honest with you, I'd never heard of this guy before I put the list together.
I can't even imagine.
Okay.
Who is it?
It's Todd Cruz. Is the majority third baseman.
Yeah, I never would have gotten
for the 83
that.
Orioles.
I never would have gotten that.
Okay.
Wasn't even in the realm of possibilities.
You should do well on the rest of this then.
1979, Eddie Murray at first.
Oh, this is just championship teams.
Oh, just championship
just
teams.
The 3, yeah.
So 1970, you had Boog at first.
Yep.
You had, was it Belanger at shortstop?
Yep, Mark Belanger.
You had Brooks at third.
Yep.
Which is the same. You had Brooks, Boog at first and third in 66 also.
Also, yep.
I think it may have been Aparicio at shortstop in 66.
Correct.
All right. So who's the second baseman in 70? Davey Johnson?
Davey Johnson.
Is he the one in 66 also?
He also is. See, I knew you'd fly through that. I think it would have taken maybe Glenn knows a lot of Orioles, but you were a whole different level above people at Orioles trivia. So I knew you'd fly through that.
I think he probably could have gotten that too.
Oh, he would have. He would.
And I would have never gotten Bauer for second base if I hadn't been looking at rosters last night trying to find out a second baseman. Because I was my pick was Delino DeShields, but I was like, but was there somebody better than Delino DeShields that played for the Orioles?
I can't remember
who had been better not here prior to being here, and that's when I saw that it was Rich Bauer at second base. So the only one, Todd Cruz. I won't remember his name in 15 minutes. I won't remember his name.
Todd Cruz.
I'll tell you that I wouldn't have gotten the third baseman for 79 either.
Mm-hmm. I don't know who it is.
Yeah,
no idea.
I would. And 69, I probably was Davey Johnson the second baseman in 69 also. I think he may have
probably.
I think he may have been.
Well, I think Brooks' career ended in 80?
No, Brooks' career
earlier than that.
Brooks' career, he made the Hall of Fame in 83.
Okay,
so Brooks was
78.
No. I think it's 77.
Okay,
was Brooks' last year because it's 5 years following. I think. So 78, 9.
I was going to say because he could have been the World Series third baseman. I doubt it. I think that was too late for him.
Maybe it was 78.
I don't know.
Yeah, I think 78 was Brooks' last year because there's no way that he waited an extra year.
I don't know who replaced him at third base the year after. No idea.
It was 77.
Was it? Okay.
Yeah, he was here from 1955 to 1977.
It's an unreal 22-year career. Yeah, incredible. Just doesn't happen these days where you get one guy to play for 22 years with the team, unless you're like Clayton Kershaw or Adam Wainwright or Molina. But those guys are on the way out, and I'm going to be interested to see if there's any guy right now, like a Fernando Tatis, for example, who stays with the San Diego Padres for 20 years. It just doesn't happen that often. It's definitely an anomaly, and it's weird because I guess guys, it's probably the way contracts play out now, where you're going to get more money if you leave half the time. So it's probably the way it is.
Yeah. And that leads me. I wasn't going to have a final thought, but now I do.
Okay.
We heard John Angelos, and Zach doesn't like to comment on John Angelos one way or the other because he wants to work in a Major League Baseball front office at some point, and if John Angelos happens to be in a position, or Zach happens to be in a position where John Angelos could hire him, and John Angelos, for some reason or another, was listening to this show and heard Zach disapprove of some stuff he said or approve of some stuff that he took back later. I don't know. It wouldn't look good for Zach. And I get that because when I was still trying to get a full-time career, and I'm still this way now because I do this show, when I was still trying to get a full-time career working in sports, I didn't like to make comments about anything. I still don't. There are plenty. There's some people in this area, or see, even now I'm hesitant to say, but there are people in this area that cover sports that I do not care for at all, and I will not insult them by name on the air or on social media because I just don't want to burn any bridges. And,
right.
I totally get that, not wanting to burn bridges. So I totally get that. That's fair, and I understand it. Given what John Angelos said this past week about payroll. And actually, I think it was a week before, but about payroll and about the Orioles, about winning is his third priority behind like entertainment and concerts at the ballpark.
I will give you that really weird thing to say.
Yeah.
Really weird.
I get that. I get what he meant. He meant that there are people in place that are baseball people that are controlling that part of it. So he's focusing on the other stuff. But as the owner of a Major League franchise, your number one priority should always be winning, not getting Billy Joel to play here for a fifth time in 3 years. By the way, there's other age demographics other than the 45 to 78-year-old age demographic. So we can get other acts other than Billy Joel, Stevie Nicks, and what the hell is his name? Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band.
What the hell is his name?
Well, because I was thinking of the E Street Band, so I was thinking of E, and I'm like, that's not his name. Like, I know who Bruce Springsteen is.
The GOAT, that's who he is.
No, he's hey, little girls, your daddy home. That's a weird song.
Look, Into the Fire is the most overrated Bruce Springsteen song of all time. It's not even close. I think all real Bruce Springsteen fans would agree on that. It's
Into the Fire?
Yeah.
Oh, that song.
That's what it's called.
What that's called?
Yeah,
I just know it's creepy.
Yeah. It's off the Born in the USA album, and it was probably his biggest album hits wise, and it's just not that good of a song. It's got like 400 million plays on Spotify. I have no idea why. It's not a good song.
Probably, I'm not even gonna say.
There's about 100 other better songs at least.
But yeah, given what I am a little nervous that guys like Adley Rutschman, Gunnar Henderson, Cedric Mullins aren't gonna finish their careers here. And may play the bulk of their careers not here, just like Manny Machado did.
Yeah.
I'd like to think that if the Orioles are going to spend money, they'll at least do it on their own players, on keeping their guys, extending them. But if John Angelos plans on owning this team for the long haul, like he said he does, he said the Orioles are not for sale, which is a little disheartening to me. If John Angelos plans on running this team for the foreseeable future, given his comments on payroll and everything like that, and where his priorities lay, it doesn't give me a lot of hope that the Orioles' star players are still going to be here 5 to 8 years from now, when I think they should be here for at least 10 years, if not longer. And to me, it's like, go win a couple World Series now then.
We had a conversation about the Rays comment he made. We want to be like the Rays on the show yesterday. And the problem with that comment is not necessarily the Rays model's fine because they're a winning team, they do well, and there's some validity to what the Rays do. But my problem with the comment is that why put a label on it? Right? Like, why immediately go out and say, okay, this is what we're going to be and nothing else? I don't really like... If you see a free agent out there that you want to go get him, right? Like, you shouldn't have a preconceived notion of, this is what we're going to do, this is how much money we're going to spend per year, this is what we're going to be. Of course you're going to have a budget, but don't put a label on it this early. You know what I mean? I think that's the biggest thing. And even if he said we're going to be like Houston or we're going to be like the Yankees or the Dodgers, whatever, I would still say don't put a label on it. Just go out there and get what you need, and that's what's going to benefit the team most.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And honestly, I look at what the Orioles are doing, and so far, almost to a T, they are following the Houston Astros mold.
Yeah.
Because if you look at the Houston Astros and you look at what they did, and I'm just trying to look at this real quick. I think 2015 was the first year they made the playoffs after their rebuild.
It was, right.
Yeah, so they made the playoffs in 2015, did not make it in 2016. But their payroll in 2015 was about $72 million.
Okay.
And last year their payroll was about $173 million. And this year it's going to be just under $200 million. It's like 196 or 198 million, something like that. The Orioles currently, their trajectory, they're following that same payroll trajectory.
Yeah.
To where 5 years from now, 6 years from now, 7 years from now, their payroll may be up around $170, $180 million if they keep the guys that we think that they should keep and they bring in another guy or two to supplement their roster. Right now, they're on the same trajectory where they could be a playoff team this year and they could win, and they could be paying $67 million for their roster. Next year, that'll bump up to $80 million. The year after, that'll bump up to $100 million. You know, and that's what you could see. The comparing them to the Rays, who are good every year because they develop, but that's college sports. The Rays are college sports. You have a guy for 4 years. Once he's good, he graduates to somebody else, and you get somebody. You already have somebody else to replace him. One, that's a lot of pressure on your front office and the people running your ball club to consistently get it right year after year after year with prospects.
Yeah.
Two, it's hard to be a fan of a team like that because you can't buy somebody's jersey. You can't get excited for a player because you know that 4 years from now, when it comes time to pay them, they're gone. You can't get excited for that. It's really hard, in my estimation, to follow a team like that. And I've said all along, and I used to hear Bruce Cunningham say it on 105.7 The Fan, that the Orioles want to be like the Rays. Well, I don't know why. Because the Rays, they've been to 2 World Series. They haven't won one. They usually have, and they lose their star players. They don't hang on to their star players. Wander Franco and Evan Longoria are the 2 guys that they paid, and Wander Franco was injured most of last year, the first year of that big 11-year extension. So I don't want to be like the Rays. I want the Orioles to be like the Astros. And so far, so good. Ask me again in 3 years ask me again next year.
Yeah.
With what their payroll is. Any final thoughts from you before we get out of here?
No, I mean, I agree with you. And again, the labels are something I would avoid. I just don't think that's necessary, and it's not. It shouldn't control the trajectory of the franchise. That's my thought on that.
I agree. Do what it takes to win. Nobody expects you to have a $250 million payroll. That's.
But if you want a guy, get him. Right?
Yeah. Like if there's a guy out there that makes your team a World Series contender, go pay $30 million a year for him. Who cares?
But it doesn't mean you have to give out, like the Padres do, 5 $30 million contracts a year, right?
And here's the thing, and here's something I do want to ask you. A guy like Shohei Ohtani, should the Orioles be willing to give him $50 million a year because you're essentially paying for 2 players in one?
Yeah, I mean, that's the tough thing. If it would handicap your payroll where you couldn't really give out any more of those contracts at all for the next 5-10 years, then no, I wouldn't really do that. I don't think that's smart because I think you can develop enough talent that as a whole might be as valuable as that contract.
By the way, didn't you and I have an argument about how Aaron Judge...
We did. I saw you post about that on Twitter the other day.
When he was in high school, he threw... what was it? 65 strikeouts in 16 games with a .065
But that's
ERA.
That's like every good
senior
major league player, though.
Right, but that's a 0.65 ERA in 16 games with 65 strikeouts as a senior in high school. He could have still been developed as a pitcher.
Yeah,
that's fair. He was a damn good pitcher. He's a damn good pitcher. And they just said, you know what, we're going to focus on hitting because you're going to hit 62 home runs in 2022.
I mean, I think the tough thing, especially if I was looking at it from a scouting perspective, looking at that body type in high school and saying that body type's going to grow up to be a pitcher, it's a little bit tough. There's just he's big. He's really big. It's a little much to be on the mound to me. But again, I don't know how
he's 6'7", 280 pounds of solid muscle.
Right.
Randy Johnson was 6'10".
But anomaly, though. I mean, how many guys out there like most of the pitchers in baseball are on the smaller side compared to a lot of the hitters. I mean, that's just the way it is.
I think they probably average. I think
maybe it averages out.
6'2" to 6'4".
Yeah,
I'm willing to bet.
I mean, Justin Verlander, I guess, is one of the bigger guys. He's a little bit probably 6'5".
Chris Tillman was 6'5".
Yeah.
You know? So then you look at a guy like Tim Lincecum, who's like 5'7".
Sure, exactly. Or who's the guy I'm thinking of with the Reds that had the super high leg kick? He was always a tiny guy, but he was always kind of tall and lanky. I don't know. Not thinking of him right now.
Was it Bronson Arroyo?
Bronson Arroyo was pretty tall, but he had that real, like the Chris Sale body type too, where you just all skin and bones basically.
Chris Sale. And how about, and again, before we go, Steven Strasburg, man, another setback. You think his career's done?
Yeah.
Yeah, that sucks, man.
I mean, he could come back, but he'll never be Steven Strasburg.
I mean, just how highly talented was, how good he was. Then he gets that big contract, and he hasn't pitched since, basically. I think he's got, 5 starts since?
Yeah.
Like, damn, man. Steven Strasburg is one of those guys, what could have been.
Yeah.
Man, you're talking 10 years ago, he was the best pitching prospect maybe in history, and then he comes up, and he's as advertised, and now 10 years later, maybe, and his career is probably over.
Yeah. It's sad. It's really sad.
It really is a shame. Shame that we have to end the show. It is snowing outside.
I just noticed that.
It is It's been doing it for about 20 minutes. It's flurrying outside, and that means it's time to get the hell out of here. Special thanks to Eric Garfield from Florida Prospect Report for coming on, giving us such great insight on the Orioles prospects down in spring training. Thank you to Stan the Fan Charles for another great segment. He's lucky dog. He's going down to spring training here in about a week and a half. So thank you to him. Thank you to all of our listeners and our sponsors. Without either of you, we have no show. Thanks to Zach for his great work. As always, until next week,